Hey, what's going on, everyone? Check out what's coming up this week on Legacies. AGCO, you've talked about this. You talked about reviewing it. You haven't done it. Get the fuck off your ass and do something about it because you're creating unsafe work environments.
People ask me like, oh, did you like this product? And yeah, sure, I liked it, but am I going to sell it? Maybe not.
Right.
It comes down to what customers want. You know, they make the decision on what we sell.
Hey, all these products are great. Where can I get them? We can't tell you that.
Right. And what do they like? I can't tell you that either. What do they do? You absolutely can't tell you that.
We can't talk to that. No. Welcome to Legacies, everyone. I'm your host, Tom Ritchie, joined by Wesley the Wizard Bowles. Wes, good morning, sir.
Good morning.
I've slept 2 nights in a row. 2 nights in a row.
On the
Now,
Monday.
I will say that it was very much cannabis-induced sleep.
What were you taking?
Bro, I woke up so fucking groggy this morning and way past my alarm. Cannabis oil, let's see. AGCO to the rescue. They've got a fucking incredibly pure oil. It's a 1-to-1. Beautiful. Love it. I'll get the name. We'll follow up with that. They've got a ton of products. And we got this beautiful care pack Dom sent over. I've got tons of product for you. Haven't got to all of it. One thing I've not been doing is, dude, it's fucking cold.
Yeah, my windows have a clear sheet of ice over them right now. It's
like
insane.
We've entered static dry season, and I hate it. Like, I will rip my skin off. Like, I think it was like 24% humidity in my house last night, and I'm like,
Yeah, I went to No Frills last night, which is not far from here. So drove back, I have to park in a parking lot across the street, and it's literally a 2-minute walk, if that. And by the time I got back to my apartment, my hands were hurting. Like, they were actually hurting. It was really cold.
I spent, when I was 16, 17, I spent some time in Winnipeg. Now that's cold. And I did get frostbite. I got frostbite on my ears. So anytime it's even relatively cold, my ears will just ache. So avoid getting frostbite because it fucking hurts for a long time. I'm going to get a fisherman's friend here. Notice I had it out already.
Yeah.
No, feeling much better. Still congested, obviously, but we'll get that shit out. Well, the U.S. has a new president. I thought some weird shit was going to go down. There was like these, helicopters scanning the Capitol, and what the fuck was going on with all that? They're worried about some nuclear dirty bomb or something like that.
I don't know. I think it's just precautions on the day. They did it all inside, though, this time instead of outside. I guess the reason for it was, again, because it was cold, just like we're complaining about. But
was it?
Yeah.
Was
Who knows?
it?
Who
I
knows?
don't know. Who knows? There's some craziness. But then all those, what was there, 40 executive orders signed in one go? So
I think over the course of the first, it was like 100 or 150 or something.
Wow.
It was a lot, yeah.
Some people are in complete fucking outrage over, and others people are like, holy shit, finally, let's go.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're bound to have people outraged. I mean,
just by having a president.
Half the country voted for him, half the country didn't. Like, it's.
Was it half and half?
Well, I mean, I think it was.
I don't know how the US election
I think it was 76 million versus 73 million.
Okay.
And I think the population in the U.S. is something like 350 million. So a substantial amount of people didn't vote, but of those that did, it was a close race.
Looks like awkward Elon's getting himself in a little bit of heat as well with his gesturing on stage. Yeah. I won't touch that. We won't touch that.
Yeah.
I see both sides. I see both sides. Let's see what the
I
next
think
4 years
the
bring.
biggest thing I've seen is whether or not it was intended or not. I mean, it's how it was perceived.
I've always joked with you and others, like, he is an awkward dude. Even just seeing him, the way he dances, the way he throws his thumbs up, like he's awkward. I'm not defending him. I'm not defending his actions, any of that. But I've seen a lot of awkward movements come out of him before. So whatever, we'll leave it at that, I guess. But who do we got? Who do we got coming in for the Liberal side here in Canada? Carney's got his hat in the ring.
I think Carney's the front runner. Last I read, he had the four. What is it? Nominations he needs to be able to run
and then
for it.
Is Freeland the running?
Freeland's saying she's running. I think. Yeah,
I caught a bit of her. She was on with Nick Dixon on CP24, and he was talking about the Trump tariffs, right? Is that going to happen? Is it not going to? I don't fucking know. And then, battling back forward, we're not going to carry U.S. alcohol. I get it. I made a comment on one post. I'm like, I get it. Great start. But if this were to happen, that seems like we're bringing knives to a gunfight here, right? Like they're talking 25% tariffs on pretty much every export. And we do export a lot. And what do we got? What are we going to fight back with? I don't know.
Well, I don't know if it's a small start because from what I read, Canada is the largest purchaser of alcohol in the world.
US alcohol?
In the world.
In the world. What are we doing? We've got cannabis. We don't need this much alcohol.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's necessarily a small start, but I'd love to see how empty those shelves are after all the U.S. I mean, there's a lot of great Canadian whiskeys.
Oh my God,
and stuff
there
like
is some
that, but
incredible craft distilleries, especially. I like some good bourbon and cognac, and there's some from out west, especially. We'll see what happens. I don't think this is how. We're in limbo as well, right? We're looking at who's our next prime minister. Back to I saw Freeland with Nick Dixon, and he had asked, how do we combat what Trump is wanting to do with us? And it was just such a flaky response. It's like, we need to be open and honest and true business people, and it's like, don't give me some actionable steps here, like not political bullshit. I don't want to hear that stuff. I don't know. I see both sides, when it comes to liberal and PC, and that's honestly who we're going to see battling here. Let's face it. But the liberals have just fucked us so much over the last 9 years that I can't let that go. And I'm not even a spiteful person, but I can't let it go, man. I don't know.
Yep.
Listen, there's some issues going on here in Ontario when it comes to dispensaries. And we've talked about window coverings, how they create unsafe work environments before on the podcast. There's been a lot going on. But as of recent, there's been a string of robberies happening. And our friends over at Piffingtons, so Raju, he was the most recently hit store in, I think, Brampton. Previous to that, I haven't verified this, but I've heard it was a Woods and a couple Spiritleafs that have also been hit. Same people, potentially. First question I have to ask is, what the fuck? Like, we're not the US. We're not dealing with a ton of cash. We're using debit and credit. And then product, sure, I get there's cannabis product in there, but what are you leaving with? There's like 4 perps. Can I say perps? I'm not a detective, but I can say perps. Come in, like if there's video. And the one dude is so smart, he's wearing the same fucking sweater. They've got video footage of the vehicle. Now, whether it's a rental or not, I don't know, but they've got video footage of this. Apparently, they've got a license plate number as well. These people come in. This is armed robbery. Now, I don't care if it's a toy gun. I don't care if it's a BB gun. You're on the other side of that. That's scary shit, man. Right?
Yeah. I don't even think this is just an issue in Ontario right now. I think a couple months ago, too, where was it? Was it Alberta or BC where there was that string of guys pulling up to those, actually backing the truck up through the front door? Do you remember that?
Right. Yeah. Jesus.
You're not. I can't see you walking out with much cash from these places. I think most of these places are doing debit and credit
transactions. They're not coming in with bags.
And they're coming in.
This video we saw with the one at Piffingtons, and maybe we can overlay and share some stuff, and I'll talk about this more, is there's 4 guys, no bags, coming in. I don't know what they're taking. One of them's armed, I think. What are you getting with your hands? Like a few $1,000 max, maybe, but I don't know, man.
Then I think it's a chain reaction then, because this happens, and then these people post online saying, and rightfully so, but they're saying how easy it is to rob a cannabis store because we have glass facades and no one can see you come in, and then they're like, oh shit, it's super easy, and obviously the government
is sitting ducks.
Like for example, in Toronto, not having any ability to enforce. They don't have any of the resources to enforce any of these these things now. So it's just this
is a downward spiral,
reaction.
Man. Yeah, this is not good. But we've been saying this for a long time. And contrast, compare alcohol industry, from what I understand, at least in Ontario, they don't need window coverings. I know the LCBO in some cases choose to cover them, not all of them, but for advertisement purposes and seasonal display, that sort of stuff. But their vestibule entrances are always still open. Now, here's the thing. The AGCO requirement is, I think it's under Section 2, about physical store requirements. I think it's 2.5. It says cannabis and cannabis accessories must not be visible from the street or the outside. Okay, so cannabis, it doesn't say cannabis packaging. could we get away with?
Is it a gray area? You mean?
Yeah, it's a gray area. But here's what I say: fuck it. This is creating unsafe work environments. You got staff, bud tenders, rightfully so, that do not want to come to work. They do not want to be in these situations. The operators, I don't know. Like, is it even worth an insurance claim? Probably, if they're coming in and
to me, anyone in Toronto, and this is not an endorsement to go do this, but I'm thinking to myself, Toronto's already said that they can't enforce these things. So,
well, that's the city of Toronto on the illegal dispensaries. But you're right. So, like, I just say, fuck it. This is a call to all the retailers. Pull down. Raju's already done it. Others will follow. Pull down your fucking window coverings. What are they going to do? They're going to come around and find you. We will all band together. We'll support. We'll cascade this across Canada as much as we can. This is complete, total bullshit, right? Ooh, protect the kids. Protect the kids. How about protect the kids from fucking alcohol, okay? How about that? Let's start with that because we know where the killer is, right? Second to that, you're creating an incredibly unsafe work environment. And with a string of robberies across Ontario or Canada, and this continuing to happen without penalty, because that's what's got, like, what are these guys going to get? A slap on the wrist? Armed robbery is different, right?
It's crazy to me too, because there's stories out of Brampton and York and stuff like that now of people just going in. The stuff that was happening in California 6 months, a year ago, that's still happening. Like the jewelry store robberies and stuff like that, they're happening here now. Like people are just going in, smashing grabs during the midday. Yeah, and it's
you can't touch me.
insane.
You can't touch me. You can't hold me. Fuck. I fucking hate to be in a store when that happens. Be pulling out some old WWF wrestling moves. Clothesline off the fucking top rope.
Yeah.
Maybe the staff can't touch you, but I can. I don't know. I just think that AGCO, you've talked about this. You talked about reviewing it. You haven't done it. Get the fuck off your ass and do something about it because you're creating unsafe work environments. People don't want to work. It's already hard enough to find good bud tenders. Like, let's fucking go. Like, just.
I pray another death doesn't have to happen in this industry for someone to get a fucking grip and actually start paying attention. It's unfortunate, but
it's ridiculous, man. It's time. It's just time to shut it down. Fucking pull your window coverings. And some of them are beautiful. Some of them really are. They create beautiful facades, but unsafe, man. It's just unsafe. Or figure out a way that your cannabis isn't displayed. I still look at it as this gray area, and I would play that. It's a gray area. I'm not displaying any cannabis.
Who said there? Maybe we can't talk about it. Who said they were thinking of replacing their facade with actual TVs that just mirror what's inside?
Oh,
who said that? Remember?
God. Yeah.
They'll change the stickers out for actual TVs, but it's just a live recording of what's inside. So
Yeah. I forget, but that's a great idea as well. Who was that? I don't know, man. I don't know. Anyways, I forget. Well, hopefully we can figure something out. AGCO just needs to do something. Like it's just a stupid rule, right? And if we want to play with the gray area of that law, don't have any cannabis buds out. Doesn't say you can't have cannabis packaging, right?
Yeah.
Cannabis packaging. And for the most part, they're not all on display. Like you'd have to really get up to the window anyways, right? With your hands on it. I can like, even when I'm a foot away, I can't read the fucking labels. So like, come on.
Maybe time for a panic button too. Hit that button down right away.
All the lights and everything going off. Maybe, I don't know. Let's just prevent it. I don't want it to happen to begin with. Let's prevent it. Anyways, our friend J-Dub, Jonathan Wilson was on CBC.
Looking great on TV.
Great.
Yep.
I'm a little disappointed. I headed over to the comments. I want to see this get as much traction as possible. So on the CBC page, I went over to look at comments, and there was like 4, and they're all mediocre. Like, I don't know if is the audience not there? They don't care. And then again, I can't judge it based off comments. I mean, it was a great piece, highlighted what's been said multiple times. Hopefully with it being CBC, it gets to that audience that are not just within the industry like we see, because change, I think, needs to happen from outside. It has to have outside influence. And J-Dub all across the country with Alana at Dabble, they're doing what they can. Let's continue to support as much as we can. Make sure the voices are being heard, make sure the problems are being challenged. I think, I don't know. 2025 is going to be an interesting year. That's for sure. I don't know what's going to come of it, but
it's off to a great start. So
jeepers. I hope this isn't what we can expect. So I was talking about the cold. There ain't no way, like, especially with just recovering, get some lung, whatever, hard to breathe sometimes. I'm like, I ain't going outside there to smoke a joint. Ain't no fucking way. And then I remembered Wildcard Extracts sent this beautiful care pack over. I kept one. I'm not a big vapor guy. I don't vapor that much. I don't vape that much. But
that card is the only one I've been smoking.
well, I kept one back for myself. They're all different. But I kept a Wildcard by VCC, so it's a collab project. VCC, obviously, we love Kip. Shout out to Kip Rowe, our fish head friend. But anyways, this was
our seed smuggling savant.
I think this was the G-Wagon live resin one that I had. Beautiful flavor. I can't find what I did with the package for it though. So anyways, I stayed inside, had some nice hits off that one. Beautiful job, Wildcard.
Yeah, it's funny that I would never normally be a vape person, but it's funny you mentioned that just because it's cold outside and just because that's a convenience option for me to switch.
Yeah.
And yeah, the other one, I don't think it was the G-Wagon. What did I get?
You had
it was
did you have a pie one? Something pie?
Maybe it was definitely orange packaging. It was definitely Wildcard Extracts. I can't. Georgia. No.
There's a couple that they had sent that were not VCC collabs, so you might have one that wasn't.
Yeah, one of those. Anyway,
but they have a pie one. I forget. Apologies.
Excellent taste. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Love mine as well.
The terps are just phenomenal.
And it lasts me fucking forever.
Oh yeah.
Because I'm not heavy on it all day long, right? I'm just a couple of hits. It's just lasting me forever.
Just get to where you need to go quickly. That happens. How's our bud tender submissions coming along? We have something, right?
We have one here today from Stok'd. It's a double feature, so it's got both Nolan and Leon from Stok'd. So I'm going to play that really quickly, and this is their submission. So
beauty.
Hey, I'm Nolan. My name's Leon, and we work at Stok'd Cannabis. What I love about being a bud tender here over at Stok'd Cannabis the most is just being able to see how cannabis affects everybody differently, and the different ways they use it to either benefit their day or just to kind of use it in a recreational way.
And just seeing the reaction to when we just offered the best strain they've ever had. That's always a nice feeling when they come in and thank us. So the coolest part about working at Stok'd is just the vast variety of products that we have that are all craft, and we believe in all of them. There's no shortage of great products that we offer here.
And just as like how we had no shortage of great products, I think we don't have a shortage of great merchandise as well. I think aside from just a great lineup of flower, you got a great lineup of t-shirts, sweaters, ashtrays, layers, anything you kind of need to smoke and just look good as well. So I think we just do that extremely well.
Absolutely. And actually, one of my go-to products and brands to recommend people has lately been Volo, specifically the Volo Commando. That one's been my favorite. It tastes absolutely amazing. And if you're after a hit that doesn't put you on your ass, but you can still get shit done with, that would be my go-to.
And I personally prefer stuff that puts me on my ass. So like Black Market right now is stuff that I absolutely love. Their High Society is great. It's a smooth smoke. It's very, very potent. Just amazing stuff in general.
And honestly, I'm proud to work at Stok'd because I feel like for gaining knowledge, this has been the best environment that I've ever been in. Just for gaining more knowledge, learning about more products, learning about how to sell things effectively. And there's no place I'd rather want to be.
I completely agree with that. I think, just working here at Stok'd, we take that just very seriously, just educating and just making sure that we are the best that we can be on a daily basis. That's a big reason to why I'm proud of just working here at Stok'd. I believe that every day it's our mission to kind of just make our bud tenders and each other better.
Hell yeah. So if you're ever coming by Stok'd on Kingston Road, never be shy. Stop by, say hi. We'll recommend you something nice.
Definitely, because that is something very unique about our community. A lot of people do come in and try to learn about our different products and actually listen to what we actually have to say.
So thanks for having us on the Legacies podcast, and we really hope you enjoy.
Awesome.
Yeah, great start.
Great start.
You'll notice he was wearing one of my favorite. Leon was wearing one of my favorites, the puff print. That base sweater, it's the Stok'd puff print that they've got.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Of course we get one from Stok'd, right?
Yeah,
Just holding
absolutely.
them at gunpoint. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. Love hearing from the front line though, man. Like I think we take it for granted in this industry, and pay your fucking bud tenders a living wage. I'm not saying Lisa doesn't. I don't know if she does, but I would assume she does.
Yeah. No, their sentiments are really nice there. I think it's clear that we know Lisa, right? So I think it's obvious to us that it's top-down culture for sure from there. And
training, there's excitement there. You can tell that they like to show up for work. They're not the only ones. There's a lot of retailers that treat their staff really well. We want to hear from more of them. It's nice to hear you forget that they still are influencing the buying decision, very much so.
Yeah.
So it's
And
important.
I know you align a lot more with Leon because you like to be knocked on your ass by your cannabis. Right?
Yo, yeah, I just love it. Love it. I'm gonna green out and forget about my day. No, not anymore. Years ago. Years ago. I still do that by accident every once in a while, but yeah. Anyways, got a great show lined up. We've got Chris Jones from Cannabis Xpress. We're gonna find out why he entered the industry, what the success of Cannabis Xpress is, but also what the fuck happened over the data deal stuff. Hopefully he'll divulge as much information as possible. And then we've got good old buddy Jay Rosenthal. Do you remember Jay?
Cultivated Media?
Cultivated Media now was Business of Cannabis. And, we became associated with Jay, way back in 2016, 2017, somewhere in there. I just like talking to him. It's just fun. It's going to be a fun episode. We're just going to shoot the shit. He's been very U.S. focused lately. Obviously, there's a lot of action and activity going on there. Cultivated Media is supported by a lot of the activities down there. So it'll help shine a light on what do we need to be paying attention to, right?
Yep.
He's got his finger on the pulse for sure. So we'll have Chris Jones when we return. All right, welcome back, everyone. We're joined by Chris Jones, CEO and founder of Cannabis Xpress. Chris, thanks for joining Legacies, man.
Tom, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. You too.
It's been a while in the making. I think you got sick, I got sick, but we managed to make it work. We figured it out.
Yeah, I think a lot of people got sick during the holidays around Christmas, so I'm excited to finally do this.
Yeah, fuck, everyone's getting sick. It seems like it's lasting forever when people are getting sick too. I don't know what the fuck. What are they hitting with? They're dropping shit from planes. I never trust our government. Never, not in a million years. Chris, what were you doing before Cannabis Xpress? Like, what I still have trouble getting into the psyche of those that are like, I'm going into retail, or I'm going to be an LP. It's like, God damn, do you have any understanding of how crazy this market is? But what were you doing prior to entering the retail space here?
That's a good question. So it goes back fairly far. So I've always been interested in cannabis my whole life. Like even when I was younger, just cannabis was always around me. Obviously, it was illegal at the time, and I always saw an opportunity to get involved. But I just waited until it was actually legal. So when I was finishing my MBA at McMaster University, a co-op position popped up at a company called Canada Royalty, which was a publicly traded company at the time. The market cap when I first started was around 250 million. And I started working there while I was doing my MBA. I was in this tiny WeWork office on Richmond Street, and the team grew significantly. So when I was there, I worked on about 8 M&A transactions and probably the same amount of investments. So this is pre-legalization in Canada. So most of the deals we worked on were all in California, which had the regulations in place that allowed us to do that. And the market cap grew significantly during that time. If I'm sure both of you and everyone else listening remembers when everything just kept going up. Then we ended up rebranding the company name from Canada Royalty to Origin House. I stayed there after completing my MBA, working on just same type of thing, lots of M&A transactions. And then we ended up being bought by a large U.S. MSO called Cresco Labs.
Mm-hmm.
So Cresco is still one of the top 5 or 6 largest U.S. MSOs.
They're huge.
Yeah, so they bought us just to get into California because not a lot of MSOs have been successful in California. And then stayed on after the deal closed during that transition process. And then I was following the lotteries and retail licenses in Ontario. So I live in Toronto. I've lived here my whole life. And there was 2 lotteries in Ontario for licenses. And I saw, a lot of people just make, a significant amount of money from selling their licenses when they were able to. And I thought, I could probably do this. So one of my colleagues that I sat beside, pitched the idea to him, and the plan was to open up, one cannabis store. We were going to pitch our money together. We were actually going to call it Town Cannabis. So that was the original name of the company. And then what happened was, during the application process, so right when the clock struck midnight, I applied for the first license, the retail operator license.
Mm-hmm.
We were pretty early to get it, probably one of the first 150 groups to get the license, just because we had a very simple corporate structure. Our application was just very basic. So we got the license, and then we were looking for locations. Then during that time, when we were looking for locations, I came across a group who was interested in putting in money to invest in us. So we pivoted from, just being 50-50 partners to taking on outside investment. So we brought in close to $1 million from this public company and a group of private investors. And then we opened up the second store in Barrie, the fifth store in Barrie, the first store in Innisfil, and the first store in Bradford. So the name of those stores was Starbuds. So we opened up those stores and they did phenomenal. So keeping in mind, this is all during COVID. So I guess it was
Right.
pre-COVID when we started, and then COVID hit. And luckily, from the locations that we picked, it was in Simcoe County. So I don't know if either of you live up in Simcoe, but
I'm pretty close.
yeah. So in Simcoe County during COVID, people were actually allowed to be inside of the store. It was still curbside pickup, but you were allowed to actually go in the store. So it was a lot different from Toronto, where people built stores in Toronto that no one could actually enter. So at least in Simcoe, people could actually go inside. So we got lucky with that, and the locations were great spots. So the company did extremely well. The run rate in the first year or second year was close to about 15 million. And then at that point, I received an offer from the people that put in money to buy me out. So I sold my ownership in that company, and then also during that time, I left my corporate job at Origin House, and then pretty much shortly after, I started Cannabis Xpress. So I've had Cannabis Xpress for it's been about 4.5 years now since it started. So it's been a long time, but I guess pre first job of working in the cannabis industry, I've had a lot of jobs in my life. I worked at a law firm for about 2 years. I've worked at 2 large infrastructure construction companies, Elliston and Acon.
Oh yeah.
Just lots of jobs in my whole life until I
Yeah,
found something that really fit.
So there's a lot of, I find that the most positive operators, they have a varied background, right? Experience across multiple industries helps you shine a light on what's going to work and what's not going to work. So there's some craziness during COVID, like some of these stores that survived and didn't. I know that, Simcoe area is a very Dutch area community. They're like, fuck that, we're keeping our stores open. Come on in, people. But I think, so how many locations are you guys up to now? 18?
So right now 18. So I'm working on my 18th location. So I got going back to Cannabis Xpress, the business model, similar to what I wanted to do with Starbuds, but the plan for this business was, small to medium-sized towns. So looking at places where there were no stores, because I find that consumption is much higher in smaller towns versus the larger cities. Plus, we didn't have millions and millions of dollars of capital come in, so I didn't want to compete with much larger, well-capitalized retailers in saturated cities.
Yeah.
So we picked places where there were no stores or not that many stores, and then the actual locations that we picked, all of them are small. Like we probably have 2 of the smallest stores in the country. One in Brampton, one in Beaton. One of them has like 80 square feet of retail space. So looking for locations that are, very small in space, which allows us to build out the store, much faster than having a store that's thousands of square feet. And then operationally, it's a lot easier because we have 1 to 2 people working in the store. So the operational cost is lower. Combined with utilities, I'm sure you've all seen like utility costs, just energy, water, everything. It's going up significantly. So having a smaller location, utility costs a lot lower as well.
Yeah.
So that's the premise of the business. And obviously having a small store, we can't have that many SKUs in the store just because of the amount of square footage. So like limited SKUs, and that helps us a lot as well, because sometimes like I go into stores myself and ask the people working there about certain products. And when you have, 600, 800 plus products in the store, the staff can't, or they're less likely to be educated on every single product.
Well, it's damn near impossible. Let's face it, like 600, 700 SKUs, like there's just, you're always going to have top of mind awareness for maybe 20 products, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So obviously, choosing locations is one thing, and part of the success of what you've had so far. But then you're looking at, because they say location. So let's look at city. We go cities, smaller towns. They don't necessarily have any competition there. Also a bit of a risk, because you're like, some of these people go out of town to shop. Like, we need to make sure that that they're coming here. But then dialing in that, like, you're talking a couple hundred SKUs compared to some of these, I would say on average, right? The vast majority of them are 500 plus SKUs. But you need to know that demographic and that clientele fairly well to make sure that you have the 200. If you're around 200, you need to make sure that that's dialed in based on what the demographic or the buyer profiles are going to be. How do you curate the menus within those locations so that you do have that success? Because it's got to be tough. Or is it easier? I don't know. Maybe it's easier. 200. We're sitting at 200. Hey, we only need 200.
It's sometimes it's tougher. Like it's, when you're in school and you have to write a 1-page essay versus a 10-page essay, right? It is more difficult writing something that's, or picking the product assortment that's more concise. But typically, since I've been, in retail now for over 5 years, we look at, who are the companies that are going to be around for a long time, because we want customers to be able to get consistent products. Like there's so many companies, which everyone's seen, that have gone bankrupt and their products disappear. And then we have customers coming into the store asking, oh, is that, I want that, same product, and we just don't have it available anymore.
Yeah.
So we look at products, brands, companies that we think are going to be around for a long period of time. So that's important. And then we look at a lot of the statistics on, what people are buying. So our product mix, typically matches what we see in Ontario. Like if there's, 200 products we sell, 45% of them are going to be like flower, pre-rolls. And then, it goes down.
Mm-hmm.
So we look at the product mix, and then we ask customers, what they're looking for. So I'd say each store probably like 70%, 75%, they all have the same SKUs. And then, we pick certain items like, some, like for example, in Brampton, they're more pre-roll heavy. So we have a, larger selection of pre-rolls versus some of the smaller towns where some of the customers are more interested in like topicals, oils, tinctures, products like that. So for the most part, we keep it fairly consistent across the menu because, we do send out promotional emails where we have products on sale, and we don't want to, send out info on products that aren't available at most stores. Or else customers are going to be disappointed. So yeah, we keep it pretty consistent across most of them, and then we just ask customers what they want. So typically when we open up a store, we get in the same assortment as, the last store. And then over time, we just ask customers what they want and don't want, and then we just, curate it from there.
Yeah, it's smart paying attention to the the longevity of a company. It's something that hasn't come up in conversation yet, Wes, when we're talking to various operators. It's we say this, which is if I was a retailer, I would want to stock products that, one, they have longevity, right? Because there's nothing worse than someone gets used to a certain product. You always have it at a certain location. You come in and we don't have it, which happens a lot, right? And I'm sure you've seen it. But also, how well is that brand represented in market? Are they marketing themselves properly? Are they doing everything they can, rather than, oh, we've got distribution, now let's go create new SKUs. We joke about this all the time. We're going to get new SKUs to market again, rather than ensuring everything they can possibly do to support you. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, you're the one taking the risk, right? As a retailer, you're going, new product hitting the market. Okay, this brand, they've got longevity, they've got stay power, great. But you're still taking a risk to bring in their new, infused pre-roll or whatever, I don't know how do you judge that or justify that when it comes to selecting a new SKU from a brand? Brand may have a great rep in your location, in a certain location, but then they drop something new. Is it, we've had success with their products, or is it like, I don't fucking know if this is going to move?
It really depends, right? Like sometimes we bring in products, and having so many stores also is helpful because we can bring in a few cases of a product to certain stores, and then if for some reason it doesn't sell, we can transfer it somewhere else. So we do frequent inventory transfers where some products just aren't selling in one location and they sell in another. But it comes down to a few things, like our education of our employees, right? Like we put them through a pretty rigorous training program where they try out, pretty much all the products that we sell, and then they get information on everything, right? Because even if a customer does come in and they, want like Pink Kush or something and we don't have it in stock, then they need to be ready to, figure out, okay, do they want indica sativa hybrid? What terpenes do they want? What format do they want it in? What's their budget? And then they can, veer them towards a different product if we don't have something like that in stock. So having this many stores allows us to, do tests to see what works and doesn't work, right? But it comes down to like my preference of what I like. It's irrelevant to, what we sell in the store, right? Like people ask me like, oh, did you like this product? And yeah, sure, I liked it, but am I going to sell it? Maybe not. It comes down to what customers want. Like they are they make the decision on what we sell, not me.
Yeah. Well, we've heard there's a really quick way to kill your retail location. is just curate your menu based on your own preferences. I don't think I would have any business. No, you don't want that shit. You want this. I can't afford that. Oh, well, I don't know what to tell you then. It's got to be a challenge though. Has it made it easier with the AGCO change in, transfer of products? Because that was a fucking nightmare before.
Yeah, transferring products it's easy. It's easy to transfer products from store to store, but it is difficult when it comes to making purchases in Ontario through the OCS because there are still so many products available, like 5,000 plus products available through the OCS.
Yeah.
So I do feel for some of the brands who, really want to get into stores, and it is challenging, like getting into them just because there's so many products available. Right.
Yeah.
So
And everyone
yeah.
has the greatest product. This is the best product.
Yeah, I know. Usually the pitch is pretty much the same from a lot of them, But I do see some innovative products coming out that stand out. Like the infused pre-rolls, there's a lot of really great products coming out there that I've seen recently.
Yeah. So let me ask you this then, with your experience. So I'm a new brand. I've got a brand. I'm my brand rep too. I need time with Chris. I need my product stocked in Cannabis Xpress. What's the best pitch? Like what am I going to communicate to you that's going to intrigue you enough to go, yeah, I'm going to take a chance on this?
It just has to be simple. Like I get so many, I probably get like 10 emails a day where it's, really generic, like 5 pages, a sell sheet, like cut and paste, like really generic emails. And like I would just rather someone just be like direct, very specific, like 2 sentences, like, hey Chris, I have I'm launching a new infused pre-roll. It's unique because of X. Do you have, 5 minutes for a phone call? Right. And then sure, 5 minutes, I'm sold. I'll get on the phone with you. But if I get an email that's like 10 pages long, 10 attachments, and then they send me a scheduled email for an hour, like I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
Right. So it needs to be just really, really focused and just, 1 or 2 unique things about the product. It can't just be like an overload of information because I do get a ton of those,
Yeah.
really, really generic emails.
Well, I think early days it was probably dialed right in, really, I've got a new pre-roll. Do you want to try it? And then over time, everyone started to come up with fancy sell sheets, and they're required, right? I get it, yeah. Especially
Those
if
things
you're
are better once the products are already in the store. Like once
Right.
they're already in the store, you're selling them, and you want to give it to an employee just for their own knowledge on how to
Yeah.
sell it. Then yeah, those things are great. But as an initial pitch, they're not the best to.
Hit me with a wholesale price. Let me know what kind of profit margins I got, and then I'll study whether or not this is going to move in my retail location.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So you've got some stores in Brampton. There's some craziness going on in Brampton lately. What the fuck,
Lately?
man? Okay, so it's been going on for a long time. But there was, just as of recent, and I haven't verified. I heard like I don't know if it was a Woods in Brampton. There's some Spiritleafs, and most recently a Piffingtons got hit, armed robbery. Seems like the same crew. Wes and I were talking about this in the pre-show, which is like these fucking window coverings cannot be helping. What do you make of all this? Does your staff have concerns? Obviously they must, they're human. But how do you deal with this as an owner operator?
Yeah, the window coverings, like most of the robberies I've seen over the last like 2 years haven't really, like armed robberies where the store is actually open, haven't really been in Ontario. They've more so been out west, like Alberta and other places where I see a lot of these videos where they come in and the store's open. So I haven't seen a lot of, like, that was really surprising and, really just shocking and upsetting to see that a few days ago when that happened in Brampton. Luckily, we haven't had anything like that where, obviously we get some angry customers from time to time, but nothing like that. We have had some issues in the past where people try and, break in the middle of the night when the store is closed. But there's only so much you can do, like, putting bars in the windows, setting up an alarm system, not having a lot of cash in the store, keeping all your products in a, stored securely. But I'm sure both of you have seen those, even videos of the shopping mall where people run into a shopping mall
yeah.
that's open with like a hammer and they just start grabbing jewelry, right? The window coverings, I know out west in some other provinces, they said you could take them down. Do I think it will help armed robberies not happen? It'll probably be less likely to happen if we don't have those. But honestly, people are really brazen now. Like the amount of just completely brazen crime, like, carjackings that you see in broad daylight on video, it's just, that stuff is so shocking. So do I think it's going to deter people? It might deter them slightly, but I don't think it'll be significant. There's just so many things like that happening all over.
Mm.
But in terms of our staff, we just, you have panic buttons, alarms. We train them on it. If people come in, you give them what they want, then you call the police, and then
Yeah.
we try and improve our security protocol after that.
Yeah.
Right.
Does-
So luckily that hasn't happened to us.
Are there, I don't think you would do this at Cannabis Express, but I've seen some large, very large retail locations. They'll have security inside. Then you got more payroll. There's more things to pay. But you're right. I think that the criminals now, they don't give a fuck anymore. They're just going in, like you say, they'll even go into shoppers, like razors are behind fucking alarms, right?
Yeah.
But like they just go in.
They don't care.
They just grab it and run. And I'd have to think like in these cases, there's not a lot of cash on hand. We're in Canada, right? So a lot of people are still using debit and credit. So not a lot of cash. How much can you carry, I guess, if you don't have a duffel bag, right? So what are you getting? A few grand worth? It doesn't even really make it worth an insurance claim probably on your side. And if you were to, they'll probably, insurance companies are brutal. They'll up your insurance rates.
Yeah, I think it really depends on the volume of the store. Like if the store is doing, 2, 3, 4 million plus, then yeah, it could make sense to get a security guard to be in the store. But even then, they're not gonna. Someone comes in with a gun, like they're just standing there as well, right? But obviously, it might be
Cannabis is out back.
Yeah, like it might be a deterrent for people if they're choosing which locations to break into. But yeah, in terms of insurance claims, unless it's over $10,000-$15,000, it doesn't really make sense. But there's also companies out there that have smart safes, where you just have a safe that's drilled into the ground or the wall, and employees just put cash in it, and then no one can open it.
Right.
So there are those where, in the stores, I don't even think have that much cash on hand anyway. And if you steal a garbage bag worth of weed, you gotta repackage it, sell it in the streets. The value goes down by 75%. So do I
Right.
think they make money doing this? No, I don't think they make a lot of money. But honestly, people they don't care.
Yeah.
Right? If you rob 3 or 4 stores in one night between 3 people, yeah, maybe you can make $1,000 each.
Yeah,
It's not a lot of money for the the level of crime and what could happen if you do get caught.
Right. What are so being in Toronto, what were your first thoughts when the city of Toronto announced they will no longer be enforcing illicit retailers?
I do understand that. A lot of the illicit stores, these are, bylaw, patrol officers, regulatory people, not police, right? And a lot of them don't want to go into the stores. They're illegal. They could
Can't
have
blame 'em.
weapons. They could have weapons in there. They could be selling other drugs. They probably had bad experiences in the past going in there. So it's that, the police need to be involved, and it is very tough in Ontario. Luckily, the stores that I have, I don't really have any illegal stores near me.
Mhm.
But one thing that's been going really well in New Brunswick, so I can't say enough good things about New Brunswick. So that's where we expanded to after Ontario. So we have the 14 stores in Ontario, and then the 4 in New Brunswick. So in New Brunswick, they gave a lot more power to their bylaw. I don't know if they're called bylaw officers, but they're bylaw people, non-police employees. And they can go in, they can find the landlords and pretty much shut the place down. So in New Brunswick, it's, they work a lot faster in terms of getting these places shut down. They go after the landlords. That's what they really should be doing. If landlord face $100,000 fines, and then the city took the buildings from them, then no one would want to rent to the illegal stores. But the problem is they make more money than the fines that they get, right? So they get the fine, they reopen, and then it continues business as usual, right? But if you go after the landlords and you actually are able to take the buildings from these people, then a lot would change faster. But it's, things move a lot slower in Ontario than New Brunswick. But yeah, New Brunswick, it's night and day. They do things really well out there, which is, one of the reasons why we expanded out there after Ontario.
And how many stores do you have in New Brunswick now?
So in New Brunswick, it's a unique market. So if you're not familiar, basically Ontario's open market. Either of you could just, make a company, you apply for a location, you make sure it's not too close to a school, you make sure the town or municipality is opted in, and then you just go through the same process that everyone goes through to open up. New Brunswick is unique because initially they had, when they first started, they had 15, 20 stores, and then they were actually up for sale. So they were planning on selling their stores. I think a lot of large companies bid on them. And then near the end of the process, they decided to not do that, and they kept their stores. So in Cannabis New Brunswick, I believe they have about 25 locations right now. So if you imagine like the LCBO, that's how it is over there. It's like a crown corporation called
Mhm.
Cannabis ND. And then they realize that a lot of the smaller towns, they need stores, and people like a vast majority of people are still buying products illegally in New Brunswick. So they were trying to figure out how to tackle this. So what they did was they announced 10 licenses. This is probably like 2 years ago.
Mm.
10 licenses, government RFP application. So very heavy application, like, who's on your team, where's the location, what's your operation plan, what's your, financial background, etc. So very thorough application. So I applied for all 10 of them, every single application. And before that, I was always looking at other provinces, but it just I would need to, clone myself to actually be successful out there, just because most of them, people can open up right beside you. So I
Mhm.
wanted to find a place where I could be the most competitive. So when I saw these applications and I realized that, if I do get one of these licenses, once I open up, I'm probably going to be the only person that's allowed to be in this town forever. So I applied for all of them. We actually were ranked number one on every single application.
Wow.
And then we were only able to pick 3. So there was an ownership cap percentage at the time. So we had to pick 3 out of the 10. So I visited New Brunswick, picked the 3 based on, highest population, close in proximity to each other near the airport, just so I could, share staff, move around between them. And then the runners up were all contacted to say they won after that. So I opened up the 3, and then one of the applications, I was actually the only person that applied, so that one died. So it became 9, and then they recently brought it back to life, Cannabis New Brunswick, a few months ago. So I reapplied for it, and then the ownership percentage changed, so I was able to win that, to win the
cool.
bid to apply for the license. So I technically don't have the license yet until I open, but I won the bid for the license. So I have the 3 operational stores out there, and then the 4th one, which should be opening up probably sometime next month, the end of February. So
Mhm.
I'm just finalizing a few things for that right now. But New Brunswick, it's a great place. Like that's where
Sounds like it.
that's where my main focus is right now. Like our relationship with Cannabis New Brunswick is really strong. Like we opened up the first store. We're the largest private retailer out there. The margins are significantly higher selling cannabis in New Brunswick than it is in Ontario. The per capita consumption is like 3x what it is in New Brunswick than
Wow.
Ontario. A lot of people, I'm sure you both know people that have been moving, leaving Ontario over the last couple of years and going to, either out west or out east. So
Mhm,
the
mhm.
population is just increasing out there, and people just have more disposable income. Like most of my employees out there own their own houses, which is,
Wow.
in Ontario, it's definitely
Almost a fucking impossible.
completely different, right?
Yeah.
So they just have more cash to spend. So that's like my main focus right now is expanding in New Brunswick, and then, keeping up and opening up more stores out there. So that's the main focus of expansion for the business right now.
Wild. It sounds like a great opportunity. I mean, especially knowing I don't think they can guarantee no competition in those towns, but it sounds like they've at least
Yeah,
put
they
some
they they
framework
can't
around it.
guarantee it, but if the population went up by, 20x in this town, then
Sure.
it would warrant,
Yeah.
having
Yeah.
another store. But until then, it just doesn't make sense to ever have another license out
Mhm,
there.
mhm. So how the
So
hell did you rank so high on these applications?
I think it was for a few reasons. I think a lot of the larger, more established retailers just didn't apply. I think people either didn't
Mm.
know about it, or it wasn't that attractive,
Yeah.
for them to apply for these random licenses, in towns they'd never heard of. So I think a lot of the larger established retailers didn't apply.
Mhm.
And then the people in the towns, I don't know how many applicants there were per location, but I don't think anyone that applied had, the type of experience that we do, having this many stores, being financially able to actually open up the mall, um, and, finding locations that worked. So I think it was just the pool of applicants probably wasn't the strongest, and they
Mhm,
probably
mhm.
didn't have as much experience as us. So I was shocked when they called and said we were ranked so highly. I was surprised. I thought I would get lucky and maybe get one license. If I was
Yeah.
super lucky, I didn't think this would happen. But we have such a strong relationship with Cannabis New Brunswick. So they're, our distributor and also one of our regulators out there, which is, different from Ontario where it's separate.
Mhm. Would it be worth having one? Like, would you still have gone if you only had one in New Brunswick?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah?
Well, you never know what sales are going to be, right? So
Sure.
I would have just given it a try and just opened up one, and if it didn't work,
Yeah.
shut it down.
Well,
or
your
whatever,
model
but
seems to be a little more forgiving when it comes to that, rather than some of these others that are, building the Apple stores of cannabis and, sinking fucking literally millions into their locations in some cases.
Oh yeah, my
Um,
store, like my cheapest, the store I spent the least amount of money on was probably in Wasaga Beach. So my Wasaga Beach store, the rent is $400 a month.
what?
I probably spent like total, like including like security cameras, like computer shelves, tables, like toilet paper, everything you can imagine that goes into the store, probably, and signage, like 25,000 to open up
Wow.
that store. And I
Wow.
opened it up in like a month and a half. So it's
So that's
and
going to
that,
be seasonal, right? You've got Wasaga Beach, like that place is hitting hard in the summer. I would imagine that you have some seasonal ebb and flow of what's
yeah.
selling and not.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, opening up a store for that cheap, like I haven't shut any stores down, but if for some reason it didn't work, I would just, drive a truck, put everything in a truck, and then I would just move it all to the next store. Like I wouldn't really lose anything other
Yeah,
than,
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
probably had to pay my landlord a couple months of rent for, if I terminated the lease too soon. But it's I opened up the store so much faster than everyone. I think for the most part, there is a time and a place for like a large, like beautiful Apple looking store where,
Mhm.
you get a different feel. But the thing is, right now, everyone can buy, like I can buy the exact same product that they can buy,
Right,
right? For the
right.
same, for the same price.
Yeah,
So if I can buy it for the same price and their costs operationally and what they put into the store is like 1,000 times more than me, I can sell these products maybe for less, right?
right, right.
So obviously, if I, not just price, but like product selection, how educated the employees are, and then also convenience. Like people will shop at a store that's more convenient than others, but our strategy has just been picking locations where, the rent is low and we can just set the stores up a lot faster than anyone else I've seen.
Yeah. What do you find is your biggest challenge as a retail operator still? And I'm not going to go province to province, just in general.
In general, it's just more just operating the store, hiring people, terminating people, training people, like all the operational aspect of it, I think is the most challenging because, getting a store open is just so easy for me now. Like it's cut and paste. Like
Mhm,
I sign a
mhm.
lease, I have everything I need to buy. I have a contractor, sign person, electrician. I have everyone on call. I set up a lockbox. I tell them the code. They go there. They build it for me. I schedule the inspection, it's inspected, done. All right. So all of like the aspect of setting up the store is the easiest now, just it's very cut and paste. The most difficult thing is just ongoing operations.
Mhm.
People like I have a lot of employees that are sick this week. They have a really bad flu that I think a lot of people are getting.
Mhm.
So, if a store is remote, trying to find someone who can cover their shift, right? So it's
Yeah,
kind of a
yeah.
double-edged sword when it comes to operations, like having one person in some of the stores working at one time. If that person's sick, and it is last minute, it's tough to get a replacement to come in,
Right.
right? So I think operationally is probably the biggest challenge, and it's not really going anywhere. It's just ongoing. But having stores that are close in proximity to each other sometimes makes it easier because
Mhm.
then I can, get a staff member to go up and cover their shift versus, if I had a store that was really remote, we'd probably have to shut it down for the day if someone was sick.
Jeez. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's rough. What are you hopeful for in any regulatory changes?
Regulatory changes.
Yeah, it could be at the provincial or federal level. I think you'd be more affected, I would think, at the provincial level than you would at the federal level. But
I haven't even, there's none that I'm,
dude, you just blinders on, just fucking operating. Like, just
I,
let's go.
well, I've seen a lot of the interviews that you guys have done with producers and other people that are always, the taxes and everything else are too high. Like I have very different views. Like, do I think the taxes are too high? Maybe they are, but I don't complain. There's no point in complaining. It's like this is the regulations. This is what it is. Like, how
You
do we make
chose to
this work?
operate in it.
Like
Yeah.
this, I chose this, right? How do I make this work? If I can't make it work, then I got to do something else. Like
Right.
just to sit around complaining on LinkedIn about it, it does nothing. Literally
Yeah.
does nothing.
Well,
So
and I understand the stance. I mean, especially when you break down, where the tax is going. So I completely understand. And you see some of the operators, LP operators, they are struggling, right? In a lot of cases, I think the retailer margins are a little bit better than what they are on the LP side. And some say, is this normal in other industries? Yes. This is
alcohol, like, do you know any of the people that grow the hops?
Yeah, exactly. Right. It's
The tobacco
and
growers, the tobacco farmers, like
yeah, I mean, I know some, but you're right. It's typically, you go to buy some sort of CPG. You're not thinking about, the grains that went into the cereal that you're purchasing or the granola. And not to say, yeah, it's a different industry. You look at alcohol, you've got craft distilleries, craft breweries. Yeah, those individuals they're well known amongst their communities, and sometimes they have some, distribution across Canada, I'll say. But for the most part, if you're buying from any of those larger brands, no one's giving any thought to where the ingredients were sourced to make that. Not to say that it's not relevant. I'm not saying that, but you're right. Like just operate, operate, operate. But I do understand the challenges. I do understand why there's products on your shelves that may not exist because those taxes are so high. But it's always taxes. We're always talking taxes, 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 and there's so much
honestly,
more.
a lot of these companies just they built facilities that were too big. They weren't set up properly. They have inflated staff. Like I remember once I was talking to a retailer that has CFO. I was like, "You have a CFO? You have one store?" I was like, "I'm the CFO. I'm everything.
Yeah.
Like I have 18 stores and I'm everything. Why do you have a CFO?" It just didn't make sense, right? So a lot of these companies just weren't set up right. They weren't set up
Right.
right from the beginning, and they're not making any money, and they want to complain about taxes. Like
Yeah, yeah.
I have no sympathy at
What's
all
your
for any
what's
of them.
your best success story so far when you start from when you started operating to today?
There's so many milestones, honestly. There's so many successful milestones. I think the biggest one recently was expanding into New Brunswick and just being the largest private retailer out there. I think that moment was pivotal for us, just being able to, diversify, um, and to, just have another source of income from being out there. So that was a big success story. We have a really great team out there, like our team in New Brunswick. Same with Ontario, we're just phenomenal. Uh, so I think the expansion in New Brunswick is probably the biggest milestone for us recently, and we plan to keep expanding in New Brunswick.
Yeah.
Uh,
Do they have a cap on how many stores that you can own?
they they do, but I think they would be flexible with making changes if it made sense. Like if I
Yeah.
went to them and I said, "Hey, I want to buy every store that's here," uh, they might make changes, but
Right,
there
right.
there likely is still a cap. I believe it was changed just to allow uh, me and others to potentially own more stores, but there still likely is a cap right now in New Brunswick. But the thing is, New Brunswick, it's a smaller province. It's very different from Ontario. Like decisions can be made a lot faster than
Mhm.
Ontario, where it just everything takes forever. So if it made sense, and people in New Brunswick, Cannabis New Brunswick are just they're very smart. Like Cannabis New Brunswick, I'm sure you see the tables and the charts of who's making money
Yeah.
in the cannabis industry. They're doing well.
They're
So
doing well. Yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
for
they're
sure.
very forward thinking. So I think if there was a business case for them to, change the cap, remove the cap, they would be interested in exploring that.
Yeah. Do you have a goal in mind of how many locations you would like to have, or you just I jump on opportunity?
No goal, no specific goal. The
So you
plan
don't want
right now,
150 stores?
I'm gonna keep opening up stores until the time is right. Like I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've had the other stores that I sold. Like my plan for Cannabis Express was always to build it and sell it.
Mhm.
That was always the plan. Like I want to be in retail my whole life? Maybe, maybe not.
Yeah.
There's a lot of other opportunities that I think I could make a lot more money in.
Yeah. Do you
Um,
want to open an LP? Do you want to be a processor or a grower?
I have thought about introducing my own brand of products in New Brunswick only,
Mm,
not Ontario. So I have thought about that.
yeah.
But do I want to be a grower? No. Like if I wanted to introduce my own products, I would just pay a grower. I
Yeah.
wouldn't.
Source it.
Well, I have no experience operating a
Yeah, yeah.
licensed production facility. It doesn't make sense. I would just buy the product from someone, come up with a cool brand, and then sell it. I would never want to be a grower
You
myself.
seem like you'd be in a good position to be able to do that. We know some retail locations or retail owner operators have done that, and those products have been somewhat successful. But would it be based, if you were to do that, would it be based on, we know this brand will resonate with the demographic in these areas, or it would be based on, we know the product and the profiles of the products that would really sell through in certain areas? Which way would you go about analyzing it?
I think specifically for New Brunswick, so I wouldn't do this in Ontario just because it's way too competitive, and I'm better off just buying products from other people. But in New Brunswick, we do have a pretty strong following of people. Like we sell clothes, like the shirt I'm wearing, this
Wow.
hoodie. We sell clothing in New Brunswick. People love our clothing. So I think we've built up a pretty strong brand out there where, we sell a lot of like accessories with our own brand name on it in both provinces, but we sell a lot in New Brunswick. So I think if we did start branding our own products, people would buy them just because they have a strong and a positive relationship with the brand.
Oh, that's cool.
So I would probably just start with a pre-roll. Pre-roll is always the easiest,
Yeah.
3-pack, 5-pack, 1-pack, whatever.
A lot of lazy
Pre-rolls.
people out there. Pre-rolls
And then,
work.
yeah, and then just see how that goes and then expand. But
Yeah, yeah.
it's it would just be New Brunswick only. That is something I have thought about. I haven't, pulled the trigger on it yet, but it is.
You've got nothing else on the go.
Yeah, it is a thought in my mind. Like, but right now, like my focus is just open up more stores in New Brunswick, and then see when the time is right to eventually sell the business to a larger operator, a smaller one, or someone who just wants to enter the industry. But the
Yeah,
plan
yeah.
is always just to build and sell, and until that time comes, I'm just going to keep opening up more stores.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Well, listen, I think I'd be chastised if I wasn't to ask you about the data fee
Here comes.
bullshit. Well, listen, my mind has switched back and forth so many fucking times over the last 2 years on this. It's not even funny. And I'll preface it by saying there are a lot of independent retailers that were very against data fees, and now they all seem to be banding together to an acceptance of data fees. And for me, I look at it as like call it what it needs to be called, but give some guidance, some proper guidance on it, right? I think you and I have talked about this. I'm going to allow you to share what you want, what you can, what you're comfortable. If you don't want to share anything, don't share anything. But I mean, I think where I'm a little upset about all of this is we had some very outspoken independents that are now going.
How many outspoken independents?
There was actually quite a few.
A rough number. I'm just curious. A rough number.
Oh God, we could say almost all of them. Right?
Well, in Ontario.
Oh, you mean
like,
being very outspoken? I would say there was a group of at least five. At least
okay,
five.
so 5
right?
out of like 1,700 stores. in Ontario?
1,700 stores. But then you
5
get
out.
the ones that in private conversations that say, yeah, these data fees are going to crush us. And then now we see there's multiple, right? So if we look at the IRCC and the other organizations, and now there's the Independent Cannabis Alliance, and there's all some sort of structure for a data fee in there. Like, let's not kid ourselves, right? Unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know which way we want to look at it. Unfortunate for you, you got hit. You're the one that the AGCO goes after. And there was a lot of uproar about this because others are going, why the fuck didn't they hit High Tide? Like High Tide, they show it. It's right here. Obviously, High Tide would bury them with 5 million documents. You gave them everything. You're like, you know what? I'm going by what's going on in the industry. Here is the outline within the air quote regulations or guidance documents. Here you go. Take all 80,000 of my documents.
82,000 plus.
82,000 plus. But you didn't just sit back. So they hit you with, you can't do this. And then they slap you with a fine, right? And you go, fuck you. I'm going to take you to court. At what point, and then just going to turn it over, tell us what you want, what you don't want again. And then there was a withdrawal. You're like, you know what? Fuck this. Just, let's settle this. This is enough's enough. So how did it all shake out? And then ultimately for you to go, you know what? I'm just done with this shit. I just need it out of my hair.
Wow, there's a lot to unpack there. So I think going back a little bit in time, and like a lot of the I guess similar vibe from like the LPs who complain about the taxes and some small or whatever retailers that complain about the data fees, right? I think that like people, I've seen retailers that have complained about the data fees saying, the person next door sells data and then they undercut us, right? I think the amount of money that a lot of them are bringing in from selling data isn't that significant. It's not that high. Like if you look at, whatever publicly traded company, you can see that revenue line, you just divide it by how many stores. Like if you do that math and you see how much they're making on a per store basis, that really isn't going to move the needle on, if my store is going to go underwater or be successful. if they end up, whatever amount of money it ends up being. So I think there are some people that just want to put blame on others for not being successful, right? Like
Yeah.
if I picked a bad location, I spent way too much money on my store, and no one wants to shop here, then you just point blame at something else, some external factor as to why you're not successful. I think that's ridiculous.
Mhm.
I think a lot of and I haven't even seen that many people, complain about it. Like I know I've watched some of the interviews that you guys have done, but in terms of how many independent retailers there are, there's tons. And like you mentioned, there's a lot of groups. There's probably like 5 or 6 groups right now that represents X number of retailers. And if you add up how many retailers all of those groups represent, it's probably like 75-80% of the total number of stores in Ontario.
Mm.
So I guess going back to us, so there is some things I can't talk about when it comes
course.
to our fine. We did receive a fine from the AGCO. We appealed the fine, and then we ended up settling it for half the price of the fine just before the trial was to start. But if data fees were to be banned, then there's rules. The AGCO came out with rules saying that retailers were allowed to sell data. Those rules came out. And then more retailers started selling data based on those rules that the AGCO put out there,
Mhm.
right? And not a lot of people are complaining about data fees, to be honest. Like I know you guys have spoken to a couple people that, have complained about it, but it represents such a small amount of retailers in the total number in
Yeah.
Ontario and other provinces. And I think they just, they want a platform to just complain.
Yeah.
Like
Well, like I said, I've changed. Not so much I was on one side hard, the other side hard about it. It was, I understand other industries, but I also understand, I think the biggest thing to me is that really dawned on me over the last maybe couple months was the risk involved as a retailer taking a new product. I mentioned that earlier as we were, chatting, is that I'm bringing in a product. I'm spending my own money to bring in a product that may not move. So there has to be some sort of give and take, I think. And just like there was certain retailers that were complaining, there was a lot of brands. And I'll say brands, whether they're owned by a certain LP or they're just a brand and they're sourcing. There was a lot of brands that were very vocal and against it as well, and it shouldn't be happening. But meanwhile, they've all changed their tunes as well, saying, yeah, I need distribution. I have to pay to get, at least, maybe it's not in perpetuity, but to get shelf space, right? Just to gain it to begin with, to see, is it going to sell, right? And I think that we need to understand that risk from both sides. So I don't know. I'm at the point where, like, just fucking operate. Just operate. Like, nothing's changing
in terms of
overnight.
the data, like the industry is still highly fragmented, right? Like there's 60% of the retail stores are like 1 to 3 locations. So it's still very highly fragmented. And then recently the OCS started providing data to LPs on, what stores were buying products. But LPs need this data, right? They value the data because they want to know where their product's selling, what other products that store is selling, how fast their products are moving, and then where to focus their attention, right? Like out of my 14 stores, probably like 5, 6, 7 of them have, way more sales than the others, right? So where to focus your attention as an LP? Like I want to know, do I drive all the way up to Wasaga, or do I drive to Brampton and focus my efforts on selling to these 2 Brampton stores instead of going to Wasaga Beach, which, has less sales than Brampton,
Yeah.
right? So the data is extremely valuable. And in other industries, my dog's barking. I usually don't like to make comparisons to other industries, saying like, oh, if they're doing it, we should do it. I think that's
Right.
stupid. I think that's a stupid argument because there's an endless amount of comparisons you can make to other industries. So I think that's irrelevant to the conversation. But data is super valuable. Right. So the LPs want to buy the data, and I don't think it comes down to, if you don't buy data from retailers, you're not going to be in stores, because that's not the case at all. There's a lot of brands that will not buy data from retailers, and their sales are phenomenal. They have great sales.
Yeah. Crazy.
So I just
Well, your dog doesn't agree with it.
little dog walking by. She's getting a little excited. I have a dog who's she's 120 pounds, almost 14 years old. She's
Wow.
a Spanish Mastiff, so she's very very old and lively. But
That's awesome.
yeah, like I think the AGCO will go after anyone else for
I think it's dead, man. I
data
don't think they're
stuff.
doing it anymore.
I don't know if they're investigating anyone, right? Like I don't know if they're investigating anyone right now in terms of the data.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was unfortunate that they investigated us, but we came to a resolution and everything's good now.
Yeah.
So we have no
Just continue operating, man. Just sell some product. Fuck it.
I know.
Continue
I
to
know.
expand into New Brunswick.
I know, and just I don't think the data stuff is like, this is just my own personal opinion. Like, I don't think it's going anywhere. I think, the licensed producers want data. They're going to continue buying it. Retailers, they want to sell data. I don't think it's going anywhere.
Yeah.
But if you want to, if you're a brand, you're complaining you're not getting into the store because you don't have a budget for data, then you're just focusing on the wrong thing.
Mm.
Like there are a lot, I'm not going to name them, but there are a lot of brands that do very well and don't buy data.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there are some that buy data and also do well. I think
and there's some that buy data and don't do well at all.
yeah, exactly. So it doesn't just come down to that, like, saying you're going to be successful if you buy data. Like that's
Yeah.
ridiculous.
Back to our
right?
beginning part of the conversation where it's like, if I'm a retailer, what are you doing to ensure that your product is going to sell? Like, I hate that the onus is almost put on the retailer, right? To go, you're going to take our product? Good. I'll pay you even. Good. And then they do nothing, like nothing in some cases, right? There's, you can't find them anywhere online. Their websites aren't up to date. Their product information is not available. Their marketing materials are non-existent. They're barely seen or scarcely seen on socials. I don't know why your products aren't selling. I have no idea, right? There's a reason certain brands have stood out or stood above other brands is their amount of marketing spend and what they're doing. Sometimes they're doing pop-ups, that sort of stuff. They're doing everything they can. So I think you usually align that success with what their actual actions are. So anyways, Chris, it's been a great hour with you, man. I appreciate you joining us.
Time flies. Time went by quick.
It does fly. It does fly. And I appreciate that you were willing to speak to the data fiasco of what was that? When was the original? Was it last year? No.
I don't even remember what it was. It was
it doesn't matter.
I don't even remember, but it's all behind us. Like everything between us, the AGCO, were great. And
I would suspect that they would probably rather see many more locations operated like yours. Because I don't think you're not necessarily reaching out complaining about this, that, and the other thing all the time. You just
honestly,
operating.
I have nothing to complain about. Like the people that some you've interviewed before that just complain and blame others. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of time to blame others for why you're not successful. Like I don't have time for that.
Yeah.
It's just
figure out what's in your own backyard, fix it, continue to operate.
Yeah, like I just, we need to grow. I open up more stores, make them profitable, and just keep growing. That's the main focus of my business. Like the regulations, sure, you can, try and lobby the government, whatever, to make changes, but it's, these are the rules. These are the rules, and if you don't want to be in the industry, then do something else.
Right. Well, sage advice, my friend. Appreciate it. Appreciate you joining Legacies and continued success.
Yeah, thank you. I hope we can get another interview going once I have 20 plus stores.
There you go. You're not far off, man. You're not far
I'm close.
off.
Maybe 25 plus. I'm getting close.
Okay, let's do 25 plus. I got some locations to send you, but only for my own needs. I appreciate you, buddy. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
All right, welcome back, everyone. We're joined by Jay Rosenthal of Cultivated Media, Cultivated News. What's going on, brother?
Nothing.
Bullshit.
I'm in full lockdown from the cold mode.
I just said as I was adjusting things, I'm like, guys, do you hear that wind whistling? And you're like, that's me.
Yeah, it's
like,
not me. It's outside my door, which I'm not opening today.
Yeah, I'm like, are you in an ice fishing hut? Like, where are you, man?
Just it feels like it.
Yeah. Well, the lakes are probably frozen by now. So even maybe Lake Ontario, Lake Erie. I don't know.
It's not great. And I was telling you previously before we came on, but we were talking a couple weeks ago about hockey, and my son plays in an outdoor league sometimes.
Yeah.
And the past 3 Tuesdays, have been -12, -14, and then last night was like -18, but
No.
we actually didn't go. They did
My
play,
God.
but we didn't go. Not
Yeah.
because it was too cold, but because we had something else. But
That's cold.
apparently it was
Well, and
brutal.
I joked with you, and I said, "This is the whole reason. You spend hours in an arena, and that chill gets to your bones.
Yeah.
and it ain't coming out.
No.
So I had to go. I was looking for the longest pimp jacket I could find. You need to get yourself a Seinfeld pimp jacket.
Yeah. It's not a bad idea. And actually, I've been watching because, I'm on Instagram all the time. Like I saw someone with an Instagram thing and she was wearing rubber gloves under her mittens because the heaters, like they hit your palm
Oh.
and not your fingertips. Apparently,
Okay.
if you wear rubber gloves, like the kind we were wearing to like during COVID, like to
Yeah,
go
yeah.
grocery shopping,
Yeah.
like they keep your hands really warm, like sweaty warm.
Okay.
As long as you don't take them off. So I'm thinking for the outdoor league on Tuesdays, that might be my next hack.
Well, make sure you put a glove over top of them.
Yeah, no,
because
you have to.
otherwise
No,
it'd be
you gotta
hell.
put-
It'd be cold as hell.
No, you put them on and then you put your mitts on over.
Okay.
It just seems like a weird way to go, but I don't.
I can
weird,
see it. I
not
mean, I
weird,
sweat
don't care.
like hell in them, especially I do all these facility visits and pull these gloves off. Like, oh, I'm sorry about that mess
Yeah.
of.
Yeah. But imagine like if it actually worked and you could like be outside comfortably,
Wow.
or
Then
you
you
probably
could be
need to
on-
bring like 5 pairs just in, you got to go
jump
in.
on Shark's Tank.
It does
come up with some
like a
brand-
recipe for really bad frostbite though. If those gloves
Yes.
come off outside,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
You do it first, and you let me know how it goes.
Yeah, then
And we'll go
inside of your
from there.
mitts are all wet. Then you're really screwed. Yeah.
This is why I wanted to be able to have you on, man. We can just
To talk
shoot
this?
shoot the shit. Yeah, we just shoot the shit. It doesn't matter where this combo goes. Screw cannabis. Why are we even doing it in cannabis? MDMA is where it's at, isn't it?
That will not keep you warm though, MDMA.
Yeah.
Or maybe it will. I don't know.
I beg to
I think it
differ.
probably would.
Yeah, but not in a great way. Like I always worried about dehydration, like MDMA. Like you just feel like everything's going about 100 miles
Yeah,
an
I
hour.
don't know.
and-
That's one thing I've never done. And you notice I said one thing.
Really?
No, I never got there, man.
it was pretty great back in the day. I'll tell you.
You mean today or ever?
Ever. Ever. Yeah. I
Oh.
know. This guy over here, everyone would have thought. Now, we won't go into the accolades and things that got into that I shouldn't have got into. But anyways, Jay, man, knowing you a while. I think we first connected when I was with Ample, Wes was with Ample,
Yeah.
and you were doing business of cannabis.
Yes.
But what the fuck were you doing before that? What were you
Oh.
doing before you went, yes, cannabis and media?
Yeah.
They
Okay.
make really good sense.
Can I say? I think the first time I met, I think you might have been in the old offices at Ample, like before.
The swing, we had
Yes.
the commercial. There was 30 commercial. So when I joined, they were building out the new office, but we had the swing space, which was the studio that Schitt's Creek kicked us
Yeah.
out of.
Yeah.
Because they were coming in and they're like, we don't care if you're done, you got to go.
Yeah.
Right. But there was also 30 commercial. So I was commuting an hour and a half and then I'd visit one spot and then I have to drive across town to the 30 commercial unit.
Yeah.
So we were, in both spots.
It was those days. Yes, the in between days. And then I drove by that place on Eastern Avenue. That's where it was, right?
It was Eastern. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. The
It's like,
revival.
that's where Ample used to be, and it's
Yeah.
you don't get down there very
all
much.
21,000 square feet. Jeez.
It's a good office.
It was a great office. It was a great office.
Those
Now,
were-
when
those
we
were
had to
heady
exit
times.
that office, I won't tell you the nitty gritty, gory details of how fucking fun that was.
I'm sure.
But we paid a pretty penny, and it was a long term lease.
Yeah.
Let me just say that.
Yeah.
And then, of course, COVID and everything.
Yeah.
Right. We're negotiating out of this, and I'm an old commercial real estate guy, right? I'm
Uh-huh.
like, guys, the fucking vacancy rates across the city right now, you're gonna come after us when we're shutting this company down. It was just acquired by a U.S. company.
Right.
What do you think is going to happen here?
Right. Right.
Like you're not
Well, you
getting
know, it's
much
funny.
money.
I think about it. I think about that space in particular because I constantly on a loop watch Silicon Valley, HBO, and like they're looking at space. They take over space. They close out space. They
Yeah.
eventually end up in like a closet. I
Yeah.
often think about that specific Ample space when it opened. It was beautiful for sure.
Oh, yeah.
It was such a moment in time. But before that moment in time, which is actually what you're asking about, I worked in, I have a 20-year history in public affairs. So
Okay.
media, heavily regulated industries, politics, policy. First on Capitol, I'm American, first on Capitol Hill, working for U.S. Senator. Then I went out to work in her California office. And then I went to work in big city government in Silicon Valley and San Jose. And then started my own public affairs firm. So working with energy, natural gas company, big utility out there, working with charter schools, another heavily regulated industry, and healthcare. Those are sort of my portfolio. And worked with candidates, work with businesses, work with trade associations and advocacy groups really on strategic communications, like marrying up lobbying, media, politics, all
so
of that.
every area you're speaking of there had money.
Yes, I know. I don't think I didn't know that. And in California, politics is very big business. It's local politics is huge. I was working in the 10th largest city in America, so it was like there was a lot going on.
Yeah.
And then we had our first daughter, or our only daughter, in 2009, and we thought in San Francisco we would either have one kid or move. And the move was definitely going to be here. I love Toronto. My wife is from here, and we moved in 2012. And then I was trying to figure out the rest of my life. I still had business in California, was going back and forth a lot, but really it's a lonely existence if you not only work remotely, but your remote is a 6-hour flight away. And so I went to work at a marketing agency, pretty good sized one, and met up with some of the people of our cannabis tribe. And said, cannabis, this was 2013, 2014, 2015. We said, cannabis is going to be legalized. What are we going to do? Some had political connections. Some had sort of, I would say, video production. And so we said, well, let's talk to anybody we know.
Yeah.
And we talked, first, the only people we know initially were like lawyers. And those lawyers knew like finance people. Those lawyers and finance people knew operators like John, to be quite honest, at Ample. And then they knew some people who were like starting cultivation businesses, some people who were going to, take people public. Like it started to be this network effect of people we were meeting with. But it became clear that the people we were meeting with, even though we were in the industry for like 3 or 4 minutes, didn't even know each other.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, so there's no like real connective tissue here. And so what does that look like? The thought was, what if we could put together like a who's who of Canadian cannabis in advance of legalization in 2018?
Yeah.
We said, well, how would we do that? Maybe if we went to like the paper of record, the Globe and Mail, and we created a sponsored content section and called it a who's who of Canadian cannabis on the eve of legalization. Maybe that would be cool. That was like the only thought.
Yeah.
And then we're like, okay, well, we need to sell this amount to cover the cost. And, we want to make a little bit of money. And then it was like, oh, if we're going to do that and we need to help produce the content, the written content, we're going to need to open lots of doors. And like, we might as well meet people. And if we're going to do that, what happens after that thing gets published? And okay, that'll be Business of Cannabis. We'll launch it in the publication. And then like one thing led to another. This is all during 2017. And we had this great sponsored content section. It was due to launch in late November, 2017. And Denton's was a huge help of ours. The law firm Denton's. They were going to host the party the night before. We were going to do a panel conversation. We were going to do 30 interviews that we were going to have written up. Like that was going to be the content part of what we were doing, and we were going to launch it the next day. 3 days before, the Globe and Mail was like, we can't do this anymore. Like, I'm sorry, but the lawyer signed off on it 6 months ago. We sold a bunch of ads in the publication. And so like, well, we're not going to do it here. Take it all back. We're like, oh no.
What the hell? What was that decision based on?
They got cold feet. Their lawyers got cold feet.
Because of cannabis.
Because of cannabis. And you'll recall like the advertising around it, like even saying a cannabis business, it adjacent to an advertisement was like really, it seems like a long time ago, but even now, it's not that different. And so they gave it all back, the money, and which put us in a position of calling all the people who had written us checks back.
Oh my God.
And this was there's like this meetup or something in Toronto called like Fuck the Company, where that like shit has hit the fan.
Yeah.
But what I didn't realize that moment when it like my heart just sank, like, oh no, we have to call all these people back that we built 6 months worth of relationship. They really trusted us, including John and like a whole bunch of others, and said, you know what, we actually can't do this. We're going to give you your money back. They're like, we don't want the money back. We want you to go do the thing. Like do the thing and give us value over the next year. And so it actually ended up being sort of our seed money that we launched it with, which turned out to be a great blessing, to be quite honest. And we said, okay, we knew our first 6 weeks of Business of Cannabis. We were going to do the event. We were going to have this content, which was now written by the Globe and Mail, even though we didn't pay for it because they gave us back our money. And we did a bunch of interviews, video interviews that we had pre-recorded. And we had a journalist with us at our first event to write a whole bunch of stories, a bunch of writers. And so we knew we had 6 weeks of content. We had also commissioned a nationwide poll about the people's comfort level with cannabis and legalization, which we're going to launch right after New Year's. And this, I'll say it now because the company's gone out of business. Like we knew the Lift event in Vancouver was going to be a big one. The first one in January of 2018. This, like, you guys are nodding, of course. Like this is, that was like,
it was a fucking blowout. Detonate made some good money.
Like that was like, to me, that was like the pinnacle because it was before the thing actually legalized, but the excitement was all there. And if you look at the trade show floor of that 2018 Lift in Vancouver, it it was a who's who, and like the money had come in, the companies had gone public, there was a lot happening, right?
Yeah.
And we figured the B2B day at Lyft is lovely. Love the Lyft people, but everybody's sitting there on their phone. Right. There, like there's a day's worth. So we're like, if we could feed content into that room for remotely, that would be kind of cool. Like we would release our poll results. We would release the videos. Like we just said, look, let's guerrilla tactic this thing, which is great. We released the poll on like a Monday. Lyft started on like a Thursday. Then that was the B2B day, and then everything else carried on from there. What we didn't realize is that we released the poll. It got picked up by BNN. They call on Tuesday, like, Jay, can you come in on Wednesday and like be live on BNN? I was like, absolutely. So I changed my flight to go out to Vancouver to like Wednesday night, and we were on BNN. So not only were we feeding our own content to the room on Thursday, but also we had these BNN clips, which we cut up a million ways and like just fed it out. And like, I know that sounds guerrilla, but our audience at that point was the 300 people sitting in that room.
Right.
And this is the thing with a lot of the media we do. It's like the audience isn't infinite. We're not trying to sell Nikes. We're trying to be a B2B publication. This is Business of Cannabis at the time. Like that is our core audience, and they're all in that room. Let's give them what they want. And then we'll show up on Thursday adjacent to our content, and on Friday we'll be there to, to bask in it. And it unbelievably, that strategy worked because there were a lot of pieces that didn't have to work.
Yeah.
And then we got to the point where it was like we were 6 weeks in, everything, like we'd done everything and it was great. But then what, right? And now we needed to provide value to the people who give us money. We said, okay, we need to start doing events. This was the business, right? Like, how are we going to do events that actually touched on something interesting that nobody else was covering, thinking about those 300 people, not necessarily a consumer audience, but an industry audience. And so I said, look, so then I searched up this is going to seem funny in hindsight.
This is
years
Google,
later.
not ChatGPT.
Right. It's Google. So like what video conferencing platform allows you to record? Because like if we could just feed people's feed all the time, like there wasn't enough news for the people in the industry about the industry. So like self-reflective media, that's not what we called it, but like, let's do interviews like the conversations we had in mid 2017. Let's have them again through Zoom, record them and push them out through people's LinkedIn feed. This was like, well, at least we'll capture interest and we'll turn to events from there. And so we did that. And I think I don't know if it's Gary Vee, but I feel like it was something he would say. Like, if you're not embarrassed by those first things you do, you're not pushing far enough. Yeah. And I swear some of the early videos are just awful. Awful. I didn't have a home office. I was doing it through a workspace which had shoddy Wi-Fi. And like, I didn't know I still don't know a lot about video editing, but I know enough that like, that is shitty. And the recordings through Zoom is awful. And the audio is like just beyond bad. And God forbid you clicked not gallery view, but speaker view. Zoom only allows one conversation at a time. It doesn't record separate tracks at the time. And you need for it to like click on, like right now it's yellow on our screen. Like the yellow needs to be on, like, so it was bad, but it was an industry starved for this, right? Like, let's talk about it. And so like the connective tissue I talked about when we were a year earlier, like nobody knew each other. We were trying to find that connective tissue. And it worked. And then we started launching some events. Like we did an event around, we launched something called Medical Cannabis Week, where we made up a week and we're like, okay, one day around sports and medicine, one around seniors, one around, compliance. And we launched this event, and Ample again was like a great supporter of ours. We did it at the Masonic Temple on Yonge and Church, where the Canadian Tire is Yonge and Church. And like, oh my God, we filled a 400 person room. Like, that seems wild. Like, and you're like, oh, if we have 400 people, we're gonna need a photographer, we're gonna need a videographer, we're gonna need an after party, which Ample did. Like, we needed to do the things like a company much larger than ours did, but also manage cash flow because we had none. And so we started doing these things and they worked. And I think it worked as a measure of like time, and nobody was doing them. And they were big events, but not small events. And so we were doing this all through events. And then we would do, like, that's how we were funding it. We would do 2 or 3 a year. Once we did Cannabis and Technology. We did Cannabis and Seniors. We did Medical Cannabis Week. And that was sort of, we would ideate around what would be capture the attention and then build events around that and sponsors around that, which allowed us to pay back, if you will, give value to the people who have given us money, but also build audience and build content. And then we would go to events, and we would go, shout out to MNP at the time, which was huge in cannabis.
Yeah.
We would go to events with them. They would set up a little studio for us, and we would have 30 conversations, which they wanted us to have. We'd put their logo on it, and we would release it. They release it to show their position in the sector. We would be sort of the content component of that. We did that a number of times, which all came and it was going well. We had a huge event, September of 2019, which was Cannabis and Tech. It was at, not Speakeasy, Steam Whistle Brewery.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Right down near, at the Roundhouse. And it was huge. We had like 500-600 people. We had booths throughout the thing. Like, it was a huge event. And then that was immediately followed up by MJ Biz in Las Vegas. This is December of 2019. So September, then December. And like, we were with the Canadian Securities Exchange. We were with a law firm and a bunch of people that wanted us to produce content in the Canada House, basically, on the trade show floor. And that was the pinnacle. I remember sitting with one of my co-founders, Blaine, at the time, at a bar in Las Vegas after all this thing had happened. We're like, this was an incredible year. We had like money in the bank. We were paying ourselves. We were grabbing this attention, not only in Canada, but with audiences beyond. And we're like, 2020 is going to be amazing. And we like, literally on the back of a napkin, we're like, here's what we could do. So we're not as dependent on events only, but like, we could do content and get paid. And we thought of a model. I liken it to like, there's like an official eye surgeon of the Toronto Blue Jays.
Okay.
I was like, if we could do that, but with cannabis, like an official law firm or business of cannabis, an official regulatory consultancy of business of cannabis, official insurance company, official human capital, like official data and insights company. If we could find enough, like that could be a monthly content stream for us, a monthly sponsorship for us. And we would, have advertisers that would be longer term than just events. Yeah. And if I tell you that we signed 2 the day everything shut down for COVID, one was Cannabis at Work and one was BDSA, which is a data and insights company. They're like, we love this idea, ongoing content featuring our people and expertise. We get content that we couldn't get otherwise. And like, this would be great. We got job listings and we got data and insights. And then the world shut down in March 2020. However, we had spent the previous year basically doing Zoom interviews. Right. So like, whenever it was March 20th, everything shut down. March 21st, if that was the Monday, we're like, hey, we're back. We're going to do a live stream every single day. I set up camp right behind this wall and said, look, we're going to do a live stream every day. We got enough people to talk to. Nobody has anything to do. We'll do a weekly webinar on Fridays, like a lunch and learn. We will do the things we're going to do. We'll bring all of our events, cannabis and tech and otherwise, online. And, we could just pivot like that because I had an external mic and a good internet connection and a webcam. Yep. And so that brought us through. And by the way, stabilized our, nobody else was doing it. Like, you couldn't do a lift event anymore. You could only do what we were doing. So, and I was, on sales calls to sponsorship calls to all the law firms we had just seen in Las Vegas and said, hey, we came to your dinner in Las Vegas. It was amazing. Between your booth, your team, and the time in Vegas, that must have cost you $50,000. You give us 5. We're going to do a great online event. We're going to keep your people in front of the industry right now. And like, that's how we basically made it through COVID because we could pivot. And then we sold in 2021, which was great for us and the founders, the 2 founders that I founded the business with. And then I left Business of Cannabis in 2022 and the Prohibition Partners took it and is running with it.
Wow.
And I went to work at
That's quite
Dutchie.
the background, man. Yeah, and then you joined Dutchie. But let me. Yeah. So there was, which event was it? It must have been was it the Steam Whistle one?
Yeah.
We did there was an after party we did. We had that penthouse area, but we also recorded. No, that was all day recordings.
Yeah. So that was adjacent to Lyft. So this is the theater,
that's what it was. Yeah.
And we were across kind of across the street
That's
at
right.
the Soho Hotel, I think it's called.
Something like that. Yeah, I forget.
And we
what it
took
was,
over.
but-
You guys took over the suite.
Yeah.
And we did we live streamed for 10 hours.
Yeah, it was
And
nuts.
It was great. And that idea, we've done that a number of times since then, Cultivated and otherwise, where we're set up shop. And what I think we didn't do then, what we do now is create a really good workflow where I send it out to the 50 people or the 100 people we want to interview. We have a Calendly basically that they set up their own time.
You're a madman. I would never fucking do that. And there's no way.
The problem is, Wes and you will understand the problem, is that we get back from MJ Biz because we did this just now on the trade show floor in partnership with MJ Biz. You get back and you have 40 interviews.
Yeah.
Which is amazing.
Yeah.
But then you have 40 to edit. And then
40,
how do you roll out 40 at once? You don't really, because that just like spams the whole
Yeah.
algorithm. So we're rolling out 2 a week from
So you got
MJ Biz.
yeah, you get 20 weeks worth of content.
You do, except, you're asking them questions about the state of the industry.
Well, that's the
at the
next
beginning
issue,
of December
yes.
2024.
Yeah.
Like now we have a new administration, a new attorney general, a
Oh,
new
man.
DA in the States. Like, but people like to see them. This is the truism. People like to see themselves.
Yeah, I do have to I ride your ass about this one a little bit.
Oh, good.
This is funny. So let me ask you just straight up. Do you remember our VP of Finance?
Name?
I'll give you his name. I'm waiting to see if you remember his name first because we're going to tag him in this. Peter Slater.
Peter Slater.
Oh my God, you still don't fucking remember. Okay, so this is what's so funny. This is the most hilarious thing in the world. Like Peter and I were like just always together, right? Always together. So we went to what was the event at the Masonic Temple?
Oh yeah, I know. Yeah. Sorry.
So you come up and you're like, "Hey, Jay Rosenthal," and he's like, "Yeah, Peter Slater." And I go, "What the fuck was that all about?" He goes, "I've introduced myself to him like 5 times and he still doesn't remember." I go, "Well, you just have a one of those faces people just can't remember, Peter. I'm sorry. There's just nothing we can do." So
now
he
I
would
feel
always be
terrible.
like, Jay just never remembers me. I'm like, "Oh, he's a big celebrity. Why would he remember you?" And then I try to make him feel even worse.
I feel bad because I don't like.
Meanwhile,
Especially
he was
then.
he's the one signing
I
the checks
know.
for all of the sponsorships that we were doing.
I know. Shit. But I tell you, like, and I don't do that anymore. I'm much more. Well, I know I forget everybody, and like that was a long time ago now. Like that was that was already a long time ago, and I'm much older since then. I try not to do that, and I try to be like, oh yeah, of course. But then you realize that it seems like it was a small industry, but like there were a lot of people working in it.
Yeah.
A lot of people around.
Well, my worst is especially events. Like if I'm not wearing my glasses, I can't recognize a face 15 feet in front of me. And people will be, I'm like, I think that person waved at me. Who was that? I don't even know who that was. Oh my God. And then I'm going to hear about it, right?
Yeah.
I always feel so bad.
Yeah,
but
now
I'm
I
like,
feel like shit. I really appreciate that.
So we'll just say, Peter, if you're listening, now we'll tag him and he'll tune in. Jay knows exactly who you are. He loves
totally.
you.
Oh yeah.
No
I do.
hard feelings.
And thank you for writing those checks way back when.
Thank you for writing those checks.
And if there's more you want to write, I'm always available.
Well, which begs the next question. So, I mean, you sell business of cannabis. At the time, you weren't doing any content curation for like Europe and Australia and all that stuff, right? They had expanded that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they weren't. We were not.
Yeah.
Like we would dabble. Like we once thought we would go to like ICBC in Berlin or whatever, and like do that. But like I wasn't going to go there. And this was years ago. Like even still, it's not really there yet. Like we would go and interview the same Canadians we like.
Right.
And frankly, that actually is what the Canadians wanted. They wanted to be seen in another country like
Look
that.
where I am.
Yeah. Like that's actually good for investors.
Yeah.
But we thought about it, but really what we wanted to do was do more in the US. And so at the tail end of Business of Cannabis, we had done 3 events in New York, 2 in Brooklyn and 1 in Manhattan. We did a great event at Rockefeller Center. At the, not the chandelier room, whatever it's called, up at the top. Like it was unbelievable. And that's really what we want to do. We saw New York as the sort of next wave, and it was, and it is. It just never evolved. And it was hard because, it was COVID. Right. So like the regulations in New York were pretty tight. Like here, where like you needed to have, there was a lot going on. Right.
Yeah.
And
76 vaccines. And
I could travel because I'm American, but like not everybody could.
Yeah.
And actually the team, they had bought us at the time. The folks at Prohibition, they couldn't get here from the UK. Like US wasn't letting them in September 20th. So like it was an unbelievable event. It's just like, it was really hard to do. Yeah. And then and what I wanted to do was much more in the US and do it on a faster. This happens to everybody gets acquired. Anybody who's out of business, like you want to do what you were doing, do it better, do it faster, which is why you get acquired. And you're just part of a big organization. And I want them to do amazing work. It just wasn't going to be with me. I went in-house at Dutchie and I've since left Dutchie since then. Okay. And that's when I launched sort of 2 years hence, like, Cultivated. Jeremy Burke, who has been writing like a really successful Substack about the industry. He's a journalist. He's actually from Toronto, but lives in New York. Was writing a Substack, had previously worked at Business Insider doing their cannabis newsletter. And he was doing it, I would say, on a quasi-weekly basis, like ad hoc weekly basis. And I said, Jared, if you want to do this, like I had seen my friends here who are actually in the cannabis industry, leave the cannabis industry, start something called The Peak. I don't know if you know Alex Blumenstein and Brett Chang.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And they had run something called Leaf Forward, which was like a cannabis meetup, which was really successful.
Yeah.
And I just said, like, if you want to do it, like, you got to get in the daily business game, which is so hard. Like, doing it daily is nearly impossible. You need a great workflow. You need to be able to write quickly, think quickly, actually have context to the news, and go. And so we talked about that, what the workflow would look like, and sort of the newsletter would be written by him. We'd be producing the whole thing. I would do the content associated with it. And I just saw this space where the news organizations in cannabis were like dying down, frankly.
Yeah.
And every new market, New York, Canada, whatever, there would be this ramp up of Canada-focused industry news,
Yeah.
and then it would die down as soon as it got uninteresting for a traditional newspaper, which we saw with the National Post and that group. We saw it in New York recently. The New York Cannabis Insider went away. Like, it just happens. There's a cycle. And I said, but if we could build something that we could do for the long haul, so not the ups and downs, but like, let's build it for the industry. We understand the industry, and let's do it on a daily basis. Like, we will find audience, we will build slowly, and we will do this thing really well. And that's sort of, we're 1 year in, and that's what's happening. And we think we're providing real value. We're talking to tons of new sponsors and partners because it doesn't exist anywhere else. And frankly, if the only other place to get in front of the industry is at trade shows, it's really hard. Like, trade shows are expensive. They only happen in many cases once a year.
Yep.
That's not necessarily conducive to a business cycle that is much faster than that. And the companies or types of companies we were talking about way back in 2018, like the ancillary businesses, the technology companies like Ample, the lawyers, the finance people, the regulatory consultants, and now it's the security, the infrastructure, CDZ, like all that still exists in the States, and they're doing okay, right?
Yeah.
They're, they have a big industry. And so how do we tap into that? Because their audience is our audience, right? The 7,000 people we email a day are the same 7,000 they're looking for on the trade show floor at MJ Biz, but they read our thing every day, and they're only at MJ Biz for 3 days. How could we provide that really amazing service 300 days a year as opposed to 3? And that is sort of our niche.
Wow, man, that's a lot. Do you see, like, with, because there are still some quasi-successful, cannabis news outlets, right?
Yeah.
Most existing in the U.S. I mean, our mainstay in Canada is obviously StratCan has, their finger on the pulse, and they know what's going on. But is it like Canada's kind of?
I saw you had David Brown on.
Oh yeah, we've had him on a couple times. Love chatting.
You're just
with
going
David.
through all the beards.
Yeah, all the beard. Yeah, it's beard month. I started growing it. Yeah, I can't grow a beard.
It's gonna take you till November beards to grow.
I flip out. Yeah, exactly. I flip out at like 2 weeks. I want to rip my face off. Just like tear it off.
Oh, you need to go right through that.
Yeah, I don't think I can.
Yeah.
But do you think in like for Canada, is it, dare I say it, it's gotten boring? You know what I mean by that. Some of the listeners are going to go, that fucking asshole.
Well, no, I think boring was the desired effect in a couple of different ways. Like, one, like, you want to create industry. Eventually, the industry is the industry. Like, it's going to fluctuate.
Like, this isn't happening in alcohol right now. Not that I know of. I don't know. Maybe.
Well, no, because alcohol had happened 100 years ago. Right? Like, I assume at one point there was only up and to the right. But at some point, like, I just saw alcohol sales. That professor, I forget his name, Michael Armstrong from Brock, like on pricing of alcohol. Right. It's actually it went down in December, but up in aggregate over the past 5 years. Cannabis has gone down. At some point, it's like, it's not a flat line, but it fluctuates, bumps along. Same thing with cannabis. Like, would it be great to have more from the legacy market, to use your names? Like, yes, but is that going to be another $1 billion? Probably not. Like, it's just not. Right. So like at some point, and I remember very early on, so 1 year after legalization, it was early 2019 or, October 2019. There was an event in Toronto. There were government officials there, and the industry was like saying their piece, like, hey, taxation, blah, 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 blah. And the guy said, hold on one sec. Like, thank you. Like, I'm here to listen, want to hear all these things. You know what it sounds like to me? And everybody's like, what does it sound like to you? It's like, you sound like every other industry. He's like, congratulations.
I think I remember that event.
Like, you sound like every other industry.
Yeah.
And like, that's desirable, of course. But also when you sound like alcohol or pharma, or like whatever, take your pick.
Yeah, tobacco didn't matter. Yeah.
Tobacco, pharma, natural foods, dairy, like whatever. It doesn't fall on deaf ears in Ottawa, but like, you just do sound like every other industry because every industry has their things. Now, I think they're more burdensome in cannabis. The taxation, the regulations, all those things are more burdensome, but you have to think of yourself as like a member of parliament. Right. And you're like, I hear all these things all the time. It's like, it becomes not noise, but like, you got to pick your battles. Now, I think Canada's almost reached that, or has, and I know that there's tweaks along the way. The market is the market. There's new products that launch, which is great. There's products that fall off the shelves, which is probably also necessary. Would it be amazing if some of the government agencies that sort of run this, like, weren't the most successful cannabis businesses in the world? Maybe, but like, you also look at some of the states, which we think states, free market. Wisconsin, a fairly conservative state, even though, it's purple, if you will. Like, they're talking about a model that has, a wholesaler or retail that is state-owned. New Hampshire, a very conservative libertarian state, if you will. They have government-controlled alcohol sales, talking about the same thing with cannabis. So, like, there's no model that, like, it outshines the rest, right? Like, there just isn't. Is it the model like New York, which has a real bent on social equity and smaller businesses for the first 3-5 years, whatever, and before the big MSOs come in? That model had a very slow start, and now it's ramping up. Like Colorado or California, the older markets, again, small businesses, but also there's still some cities that don't have cannabis. So, like, there is no model, to my mind, that, like, is the one you look to.
It's the gold standard. Yeah.
And then people are like, well, you can, whatever your stand on this is, like, Minnesota, the most normalized THC market there is, where you can buy THC beverages, gummies, edibles in corner stores and gas stations, at breweries, on tap, hemp-derived THC beverages, and you can buy THC beverages in liquor stores. However, it's hemp-derived. So, like, the cannabis industry is like, well, screw that. Like, and, like, their adult use hasn't kicked off because it's too burdensome. So, like, there's no silver bullet. There's no one way to do it. And then it depends. This is what I tell people. It depends on your policy goals, what you think is a success. Is your policy goal to drive down the legacy market? That would mean open it up as fast as possible and see what happens.
That's right.
Right? That's almost what Ontario did at some point. Like, okay.
After its multiple pivots,
Right. But then it was like, okay, it went from 5 licenses a month to 25 a month to, like, as many as we can do.
Free for all.
Let's saturate downtown Toronto. Great. And then, like, and now you see the repercussions, like, 3 in my neighborhood have closed. We still have 6. Right. Like, so is that the policy goal? Is the policy goal to, depend on your policy,
protect the kids, protect the children.
Right. Protect the children. That's another thing. Like, is it to create, it's almost never to create an industry.
Right.
Like, and so, if you look at that and you look at the OCS numbers, it says, 70% of people are buying legal weed. Like, that seems like a policy goal achieved. The ancillary part of that is that, there's...
and we're making all the money.
But that's also, that is a policy goal too, like taxation, right? And we need to regulate this, and how do we want to control it? And now, I think that if you look at all the legalization markets, the sky doesn't fall under any of these things, right? The sky doesn't fall if you go very quickly. The sky doesn't fall if you go very slowly. People will access cannabis how they want to access cannabis.
Right.
And this is the joke around Florida. Like, Florida has the largest medical market in the history of the world. It's like 800,000 patients, $1 billion plus market. People are accessing cannabis in Florida, and it's not that hard. It's just it's not that hard. It's, if you are committed,
like
early
days Cali, you could get it.
You can get it, and but does that, like? But I think some elected officials in particular are like, well, we can't have legal cannabis because then everybody will have weed. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, people are going to get it. And so it's a little bit like, you can put up all these barriers to people getting it, but they're going to get it anyway. The higher those barriers, the more likely they are to get it, not from the sources you want them to do, which goes to the policy goals. It's just, it is less difficult now, but it was more difficult previously to make decisions like cannabis. There is a stigma, and certainly was a stigma about doing this. I think the stigma was actually less in Canada, even from its inception. But you can't, can't, new dogs, old tricks, or whatever it is, old dogs, new tricks. Older elected officials have a real problem with this.
Oh, yeah.
And
well, we've said this from the beginning, right? Like, even when Canada was rolling out, a lot of people up in arms, and we said, listen, this is not going to appease the vast majority of this country. There are still a ton that oppose legalization of cannabis. So how do you roll a system out then? I think you lock it down. You have to be able to cater to those individuals that are very much opposed to it. So heavily regulate it. There's no doubt that in the background, the government is going, yeah, we're going to make money off this. But they were fair coming out of the gate saying, we plan to recoup the cost of this very quickly. And they have, right? In spades, I think. I don't know, man.
Well, the other argument, which I think, like a Justin Trudeau did make the case, and I think others are and the states are bad at making this case, to be quite honest. The current policy doesn't work. Like
Right.
prohibition doesn't work. Not because again, kids have access to it. It's unregulated. Like, you know, you can get it wherever you want. Like all the things that you would want to, you know, you don't know what's in it. It's untested, all those things.
Sure.
And
Yeah,
you don't
of
make any
course.
money on it from a government perspective. Like the policy doesn't work. So it's not like you're choosing between a policy you love and a policy you hate.
Yeah.
The policy now doesn't work. And it is a policy. Doing nothing is a policy.
That's right. 100%.
And this now, I think, begs the question of what's happening, certainly in downtown Toronto, certainly downtown Vancouver and other places too, around psychedelics and, you know, the shroomies of the world.
Yeah.
And I don't know what I would do if I used to, you know, be an advisor to elected officials, a big city mayor. Like, I don't know what you would do. And it's a little bit different here, whereas in the States, they have much more control of local land use. But I don't know what you do if you're Toronto and you have mushroom shops.
Yeah.
I don't know, because you could shut them down, absolutely, and they do, but then they go online, and then there's no way to you know, there's no way to disrupt that.
Yeah. Well,
and
they
so-
do. It's very expensive, very expensive. And then by the time you've got it shut down, they've already got another one up.
Yeah, I mean, you and you could set up a shop by the
Let's do
time we're done recording.
Hey,
No, like
Toronto doesn't care anymore, man. We'll go illegal cannabis, we'll go MDMA, cocaine, ice, you name it. Let's just go.
well,
we go.
DMT vape pens exist. Like you can get them at Shroomies. Like, or I don't know about Shroomies, but definitely at some places. Like, and it you could argue whether that's a good thing or bad thing, but it's certainly not ideal from a safety perspective.
Sure.
But how do you combat that, or do you? And we saw, I think it was last week, and it was a story in StratCan, the chief, like basically land use compliance officer, said we don't have money to shut down.
It's
legal dispensaries.
whack-a-mole. They don't, and honestly, the city bylaws should not be the ones enforcing that. That
what he
comes
said.
down to, exactly. OPP, RCMP, like they're the ones. We were at a conference not that long ago where the OPP was, they're going, oh, we're spending this much money and it's going to cost this much and we've got all these task force and we're shutting this down. It's like, hold on. How about you increase the penalty? And we had Chris Jones on from Cannabis Xpress just prior to you. And he's like, go after the landlords in New Brunswick. You're operating illegally. They're going after the landlords. Yeah, the operator, one thing, but the landlords are the ones that they need to be hitting. So if all this money is being made available via, I don't know, let's say it goes OCS, Minister of Finance carves out a little bit because it's very difficult after that to find out where is all the money going. Give some back over to the OPP, which I'm sure they are getting, and then do something about it. But how about, like, let's just start with increasing penalties. Listen, black market operator, right? I've said this a million times on the show. People that know me, this is why I have my experience in cannabis. If the penalties were higher, and one of the reasons I got out of it and jumped into the legal side, because they were touting, oh, it's going to be this maximum imprisonment and all the, I'm like, okay, I'm out. There's just no way. Risk versus reward. It was always that, right? Risk versus reward. For me now, looking at it going, why the fuck didn't I just stay in the black market? Like, this is crazy. They don't do anything. You know, it's very seldom you'll see jail time.
Right.
Second, third, fourth offense, you're still getting fines or penalties like that. I don't know, man. Like, you do this shit in New York. What happens in New York? They go and do something like this now.
Well, in New York, what they started to do, because it wasn't so much illegal dispensaries so much as like bodegas were selling weed.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So like, and they're pretty sophisticated, but like they also have other businesses that they're selling stuff,
intertwined,
right? So,
and then they're cartel tied.
no, but they went after those. They said you'll lose your tobacco license to sell tobacco, lottery tickets, and
where it
alcohol.
hurts.
So like those three, that's why people go to bodegas, right?
Yeah, right.
And so you go after those. Go after the landlords, which is hard in New York because the buildings are owned by like LLC. They're doing the same thing in DC, which had a really interesting gifting market, if you will. Like, I'm going to buy this hat for $80 and I'm going to get, an ounce. Like,
interesting.
That's
okay.
sort of, I'm really but like,
yeah. I know what you mean.
But like, and then they try to go after that, and then you got to find the landlord, you got to find the person. But some of those people are also New York, DC said, like, we'll start licensing you, but you got to start paying taxes. And then you go through the licensing process. So they started paying taxes. The licensing never happened. The people who were running gifting shops were like, the hell, man, you just told me you're going to license me. Now I just opened everything up to you. And so like, there's
surprise.
So
We're coming to bust you.
Again, it's like, what are the policy goals? How you shut down? And then DC, of course, Maryland became legal, and now the Maryland market is huge. The DC market gets dinged.
Right.
Now the DC market's like, not only are we getting screwed, we're also getting, the competition's crazy. So like, again, like this period, I don't know what we'll call it or how long it'll be or even when it started or when it'll end, but it'll be this transition period. Like say it's a 20-year transition period between like first legal country, Canada, first legal states like California and Colorado, but 20 years hence, there'll be much more access to cannabis. It'll look like a normal market. The ups and downs will probably see. What I think is really interesting and what I don't know if you know Krista Raymer from Vitrina. We often talk about, or she often tells me about, because I don't know anything, like the season, not seasonality, but there's big peaks in the year around selling. Super Bowl, huge one, right? Because you know,
your 710s, your or what is it, 720s, 510s, your green,
But like so, like those things. There's the big, 420, 710, Green Wednesday, Black Friday,
right,
New Year's, Christmas. Like you start to think about these things, and like she's a retail expert, independent of cannabis, but like putting this is a different conversation, but putting that lens of like what expertise exists in the world to bring to cannabis, retail being one of them. And you know a bunch of these people. I know a bunch of people who opened up cannabis stores, let's call them, in Ontario, that had no retail experience.
Right.
And like for a year they were operating with no competition. Like shit, they're going gangbusters.
Things are great.
Of course doesn't line up on Queen West. There's nowhere to buy weed.
Right.
But as soon as there is, it's like, oh, now it's like a corner store or a bar or a restaurant. Like you actually need to know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And it's not like just make huge chunks of money by selling vast quantities of weed. You could sell vast quantities of weed and still not make any money. It's like assortment and product and brands and like what kind of, are you increasing the basket size from $12 to $15 or from 50 to 30, 50 to 60? And like, how do you do that? And how does the sales staff work? Like there's a lot that goes into it.
There's a ton of methodologies behind that, man. And I don't know, I love when you see the content that you produce and you got her on, and there's others that have this information available, but it makes you wonder, like, what are these retail locations doing to train? Like, there's the, Snoyer, and he's got Spiffy, and you can train up budtenders on certain products, but I'm talking just, increasing basket size or cart size, ensuring that they've got the right product. What are your return policies? How are you dealing with this? How are you training staff? Do you have your SOPs in place? Like, especially with, there's all these robberies happening, and it seems like they're ramping up in Brampton, and like, it almost needs to be like just a master class. Let's do master class type things with just the simple things.
And shout out to her because she has some of those, and like she's done a lot, and she works with some big companies, small companies, like 3 to 5 or 30 to 50 dispensaries, like working with those, because also standardizing it across and also knowing that each individual one, even if you standardize it across, like I have 2 Tim Hortons in my neighborhood.
Right.
They sell differently. Their volume's different. Like the clientele is different. Same thing at a dispensary, even if it's the same brand.
But they're always going to ask you, would you like a cookie with that?
Exactly. And because there is a bit of that, and like understanding the customers, and there's a bit of that, but this goes to a trend that I've seen over the past 6 months, let's say. Even though all these challenges with the industry, both here and certainly in the States, even though there are still operators that are doing well, like there may not be the publicly traded ones, but it's very difficult to run 30 retail operations, do it well, do it consistently. But if you do it and you have methodologies, the SOPs, the training, and you keep your staff and they know how to sell, and you know what products people want in that individual store and then across, and where you're making your margins, like you can do really well.
Oh yeah.
And I think that's interesting. Like those companies that are going through this massive dip, like startup costs being what they are, then the massive dip, and to come out the other side, like I believe there will be MSOs you've never heard of that will be the numbers 1, 2, and 3, because they weren't worried about necessarily assuaging stock, investors. They were building a business, right? Like those two things sometimes are aligned. Sometimes there's a Venn diagram between great operators and great publicly traded companies. And sometimes there isn't. And you can see it here, right? Like the companies that were like the biggest publicly traded companies in Canada turned out to be not great operators.
Oh, they're just steaming piles of shit is what they ended up being. Let's just call it what it is.
That's right. And we're going to be vertically integrated, except that doesn't always work.
Oh
and
my God.
Sometimes
I remember
it does.
The
but
early days. Those early days, man. Vertically integrated.
Well, they were all Ample customers. So,
they was.
Right. But like, I'm sure as Ample was rolling out in some of these facilities, and like you're seeing the numbers of licenses and like the size of the facility, like is a 1 million square foot greenhouse necessary? Like, did that question even get asked? Or if it did, was it like, we need the 1 million square foot greenhouse because that's what investors want us to have. Therefore, we're going to like buy.
There was a, horse and cart action going on in a lot of these cases. Right. And for myself, when I came in, I was, director of education, eventually took on, a lot of other things. But I was visiting these facilities, and you'd go into one, we had Orville from Pure Sun Farms on. It was one of the first facilities I was in Delta.
Yeah.
And being a reformed grower, I walk in and I'm like, oh fuck, how do you control pests in this building? Right? Like 1 million square feet under glass. That's crazy. Now they figure it out. But then I go into others like Tom Flo, a flower facility. And I look at this and I'm like, oh, this is an MMAR grow. Like this is how one room, make it work, get profits, build another one. This is how we did it, right? You get that room, you bake it, make sure it's good, move the product, then take those monies and use it to make another one. That's what that looked like. Now, you're right, though. It's the pressure, the investment pressure, those dollars, right? Which is, what were they promised? What was the expectation? What are you delivering on? And then they have to be able to look back. And how long did they give you? Depends on the investor, right? And the investor type. Because you remember those early days, Denton's was bringing a lot of those investors and making those deals for people. I think back with, Oxley and Hugo and some of those activities. And I'm like, holy shit, like these are sitting and listening and just being, part and parcel to some of those conversations. You're like, whoo, fuck, your risk is way up there, like way up there. But again, those early days, Jay, like we didn't know what was going to happen. Money was just flying through the door. And it was like being in one of those things where they just let the wind tunnels with the money, right? How much can you grab? How much is available? But I do want to ask you this. So being that, a U.S. citizen, come and operate in Canada, you understand the complexities, the craziness and what's going on. What almost seems to kind of smoothen out a little bit in Canada, then Canada gets, some stuff is kind of just stabilized and I'll call it boring a little bit. But then you see the opportunities in the U.S. The U.S. has always been looking at Canada, but not so much to look at Canada to go, they're doing something right. Just more so, that's what they're doing up there. Maybe move a brand in here or there, right? Your Jeters and Cookies and some of these other ones. But where is the money flowing now? Because you remember, it depends on how and which lens we use. Canada was big in tech, right? Like big in tech. And we had a lot of great investors, especially American investors into Canadian tech. Think BlackBerry, RIM, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some of these early on. And then that money just fizzled away. And it went back to like Silicon Valley and it went to other areas throughout the US, which, Denver and Texas and some of these other areas. Where is it flowing now when it comes to cannabis? And how does the US, because you've got a lot of US content, a lot of US guests, how are the US individual operators viewing Canada now? Versus where is that money now flowing?
Yeah. Well, I don't think there is money flowing. So that's
okay.
just the
so
first
that's, so that's happening across North America.
Although today we talked to like an insurance company that's operating in a very specific niche, raised a bunch of money around basically consumption lounges. Really hard to insure a cannabis consumption lounge, especially in places where you can have alcohol and cannabis together, which is not that many, but there are places like that. So how do you actually underwrite that when there's no model for the past 100 years? So this is that is interesting. Well, interesting to me. You really need to be a fucking nerd to think that's interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's interesting to me.
But that is interesting to me as well. And I wouldn't say I'm a big nerd on it, but it's just,
well, you are.
How do you do? Okay, I am.
I would say. But then you think about insurance is so stable and they love data and they don't have 100 years.
Profitable.
And so
I think
you
what
have
the
to
word
find
we're looking for is profitable. They make a lot of money.
Yeah, they do because they know their industry.
They know the risk.
But they're profitable because they know actuarially.
That's right.
Right. They have all those tables.
Yeah.
Okay. So one, I'm not sure there's money flowing a lot of places. So that's like number one. But number two, like you think about, and this is true for Canada and true for new markets, where the brands that are being successful in a place like Colorado or California or Michigan or Missouri are saying, look, we don't need to go build a grow to sell flower in New York. That is not a great investment. Yeah. We know where that goes. We've done that before. But if I could find a partner in New York with a license that will follow my SOPs, that will manufacture, process, put out a brand that I'm happy with, that is a low cost relatively for me to launch a brand in New York under someone else's license on a licensing deal that it is for me to do. Unless there's a place like Missouri, which the startup costs are less than in New York and the market's much, bigger and less regulated. Like maybe I go do my manufacturing facility there, but not cultivation because cultivation is really hard unless I'm producing the premium flower, which is not how it's working right now. So I think there are smarter operators now thinking about how to make money on their own terms, right? That's one. That's happened here, right? We saw Jeter, he talked about Cookies. Like if I could find it, and we even seen brands that have come and switched who their partners are here.
Right.
Like you think about Pearls, like, I don't know if I knew Pearls was going to be huge, or Wanna Gummies, which had a partner here. Like those brands are wild. Like they do sell,
Yeah.
right? Like, do people recognize the brand from other places? Maybe. Or are they always on shelves? Do they have their processes down? Are the prices right? Do they know the consumers better than, net new operators that are like trying to figure out, or have more bandwidth to like withstand customers not buying their shit? Like whatever it is, there are smarter ways to enter a market than there ever were before, with more data, better background, all those things. And so that's not necessarily where the capital is flowing, but that's where these businesses see opportunity because, okay, I am an operator in Michigan. I want to launch my brand in New York. How do I do that most cost effectively to limit my risk and maximize the profit and do good for New York as well? Because, right now there's 250 dispensaries, but next year there'll be 1,200 dispensaries. But if I could really be good for those 200 or so, then I've like built a base of relationships, flow through all the things that I know what I need to do, and then expand from there. There's also brands in New York, because I spent time there last summer, that like launched when there were 5 dispensaries, right? But they knew what they were doing. They weren't going to invest $100 million in the facility. They were going to invest the first 3. And then your point, they were going to figure out how to get to a $3 million cash flow so they can actually pay for that. Then they're going to buy that new machine that can quadruple the number of gummies in the same amount of space. And the package manufacturer, like the packaging part, doesn't need a whole new space. It could be this. We can get them out the door. We already have trucks going. We have beverages. Like there's this company, Heirloom, in outside of Syracuse, which is an apple farm, orchard. They added cider like in the 70s. They added hard cider in the 2000s. They added a hemp license a couple years ago. So they got in the business, right? The hemp license is now transferable to cannabis in New York. So they added cannabis beverages in New York, but they also have hemp beverages, which they can sell in New York. They can also sell them all over the country. So like incremental growth, but the incremental growth. And then you're like, well, they actually know how to move product around New York, which is really hard. Huge state, terrible weather, hard to get into some places in Manhattan. But if they have the distribution, they have the manufacturing, processing, they know how to get raw product. They don't need to, they're not growing their own weed, right? Like, you know what I mean? So like,
but they would also have that brand staying power though, right? Which in Canada, that's very difficult still, right? So if you were operating outside the cannabis industry, you have an established brand, moving and transitioning that brand into cannabis is very much frowned upon.
Yeah,
right.
And it's hard. And it doesn't matter because, and this is, we talked to, I'm trying to think who it was. I know it was now. It's a company that is about to launch their hemp-derived beverages outside of their current state of operation, I guess.
Okay.
I don't want to ruin that news. But their thing is like, it's very hard to build brand even within a dispensary environment as it currently is in Canada, as it is in the States. If the only place to buy your thing is in that dispensary and marketing is what it is and it's challenging, like all the things, when I can launch a hemp-derived THC beverage, send it around the country, or say I'm going to focus on this state because I know it's underserved. We're going to market like normal alcohol and beverage. We're going to alcohol beverage distributor. Like that's how you build a brand. That's why when Anheuser-Busch launches some cool thing or whatever, they get it in stores. Yeah. Right. Like if the only place to buy it is in the store that you're never going to go in, or most people are never going to go in, how the hell are you supposed to build a brand? Yeah. And you remember this, there was the promise, we're going to get soccer moms, we're going to get older people, we're going to get them to go to dispensaries and buy edibles and beverages and weed. And like, okay, that sounds great. Except how often do you shop in somewhere you've never been in before? Like there's restaurants where you've never fucking been in.
Yeah. And how are you going to communicate the message to them that it's available there when you're not allowed?
Right.
Hey, all these products are great. Where can I get them? We can't tell you that.
Right. And what are they like? I can't tell you that either. What do they do? Absolutely can't tell you that.
We can't talk to that. No.
Right.
Maybe you're more suited for the medical side. Let's go over here and we'll get you a recommendation.
Right.
But I mean, that's one of the things that I do see as the opportunity with the US, which is the brand cascade, right? You have there's more ability to communicate your brand to the consumers, and going state to state, right? Where here it's the advertising, which is very limited, so you take the Meta's, recently changed some rules, whatever, but you're really speaking to the core audience that are already consumers anyways.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, here's my brand, people that are already consuming. So you're still fighting for that share that's already being consumed anyways. Right. You're not making a bigger pie chart. Yep. It's the same pie chart.
Right.
All you're doing is stealing share from other competitors.
Right. And I hate to bring it back to me, even though I love bringing it back to me.
Let's do that.
This is the beauty of like a B2B publication, even if it's online,
Yeah.
is that our audience is our audience. It's never going to grow tenfold. There aren't tenfold number of people
Right, yeah.
to talk to.
It's not
right?
that many crazy people to get in the industry.
Right. But if you could serve the audience you have, and this is true for a dispensary too, like if you serve the audience you have, because it's limited, amazing. Tougher for a brand, but great for a dispensary. But for a Me2B publication, like if we could grow 20% a year, which is not impossible, right? Like add another 1,400 to our 7,000. Like you start to think about that and do it really well, understand what they're like, understand what they want, understand what they need, look at the analytics and keep doubling down and show your sponsors and supporters that like you can drive, you know, the next 1 or 2 customers to their insurance company or right. Like you start to show that and you say, look, by advertising with us or partner for us for 3 months, you're going to get a better ROI than you do by buying that booth at show X and sending a 5-person team for 5 days to one of the more expensive places on earth. Like this is the, you know, again, that is a really awkward transition for what you're saying, but it is about serving your audience, right? And I'd much rather serve our smaller audience great than try to sell sneakers to 10 million people who I could never access, right? Like it's just not.
Well, then you're going to get natural growth, right? I hate the word organic, but it's true. That's how true organic growth is. And, you know, are there markets opening up? Yeah. They're still in flux, right? Even outside of the US, we start, you know, Australia, we were chasing Australia at Ample for the longest time. And I'm like, guys, you know, you've got much different regulations. The tech needs to evolve, which costs a hell of a lot of money. I mean, even Cannabis 2.0 almost sunk us at Ample, right? It was like, we've said this a million times, but we function within grow and processing and medical, right? How do we administer and ensure that adjudication, everything's taken care of? That's what that was our core value. And then, we're going to do Cannabis 2.0. Even though we knew it was coming, there was no heads up from Health Canada going,
they wanted it recorded. No.
Yeah. So how do you develop for something? And our customers are going, it's coming. We need the software to work for this. And we're like, we don't know what we're developing for yet. Like we have to let the rules drop the same time that you get them. But it's the same thing, right? It's how do you continue to see that growth? But, you know, I'll come back to where's the money flowing. It seems that it's the ancillary companies that are still doing well, right? So insurance, lenders potentially, right? Debt consolidators. We're seeing now insolvency conferences taking place in Toronto. I don't know if you're going to that. Might be some bargain deals there, flea market style. I don't know. But I mean, is this the sign of the times? Like these are the ones making the money. Insolvency professionals are now cleaning up.
Well, first of all, insolvency professionals clean up all the time regardless of industry.
True, yeah.
I'm the product of a bankruptcy attorney and a bankruptcy judge. So like, I get that. But again, like, does it seem like it seems like well, it does suck. And it seems like it happens more regularly because this is the industry we're in.
Right.
Like, and it came on a cycle. But I say this same thing in DC. Like many people in the cannabis industry, this is their first time trying to get anything from Washington.
Right.
Like paying attention. But like, if you care about almost anything, it does not take a year. And it usually doesn't take 5. Like what happens, especially in the US on legislative, it takes a very long time. Now it seems like it's taking way longer because the industry we work in and these changes are so needed and all that. But goes back to my, you know, cannabis legalization 1 year on. Like it is a lot like other industries. Cannabis is not, but the complaint, like if it's your first time through it, it feels painful and terribly long.
Yeah.
If you've been through it, like when you talk to legislators on Capitol Hill and you say, you know what, it's been 2 years since you took up this bill. They're like, 2 years? Like we've been working on legislation for 50. Like, you know, gun control legislation, that never fucking happens, right? So like you think about all these things and we have a magnifying glass on it because it's the industry we work in and it hurts and feels so much and the people we're affected. And so when they're at an insolvency conference and the people we know are going bankrupt, that fucking sucks.
Yeah.
At the same time, you know, the convenience store down the street also went out of business,
right?
Unrelated to any of this, but because of inflation or because they're bad operators or because their costs went up or because, you know, whatever. Like these things happen in every other industry all the time.
Yeah.
It's just we are also focused on it. And so we're focused on it so it hits us with a brighter light. And it is a more challenging industry to be in for sure.
Sure.
But it's like growing up, right? It's like the first time you get punched in the face, it really hurts. The second time, not so bad, right? Like it's but it is. That's why I look to places where people are like, okay, we know we're gonna get punched in the teeth. Like if you go in it eyes wide open, like if you had done an Ample before in the same industry in a different place, you'd be like, holy shit, we know it's going to be nearly
what to expect. This is going to be tough. Come on, guys, we're here for the long haul. We can do it.
Right, but like because it was so exciting and new and fresh, and you were doing it for the first time, you were pioneers. Like that feels like you're primed for success and it's like amazing, but you also realize the people that have zoomed out once one more layer, they've seen it before, right? And they're like, okay, here's what's about to happen. Because I think some of the things that we didn't see, not so much the Ample stuff, because that was a lot of Health Canada, but also like people who'd been in other industries are like, cool your jets, right?
Yeah.
Because the other thing that's interesting, and then we can wrap it, I'm sure, is like there were people in the cannabis industry who I knew that you knew that were like on the money side or the finance side, they're taking people public side.
Yeah.
And you're like, how did they just come from junior mining? I don't even know what that is, to then to cannabis and then to crypto and now to something else. Like that is what they do. Like there is a whole set of people. They jump to jump to jump. I didn't know, I honestly, maybe I'm being naive, I didn't know those people like before cannabis. But they existed before cannabis. Then they were in cannabis and they will be in something else next and next and next. That is a personality type. It's not a vertical, but it's a personality
Follow the
type.
money. Yeah.
Right. And like, I miss those people because some of them are amazing.
Yeah.
But it has been an unbelievable journey. Certainly, sitting in Toronto, watching it happen in Canada, but also sitting here in Toronto, watching it in Canada, watching what's happened in the States. And that just gets you like,
well, you've got such a unique perspective.
Yeah. But like, obviously the price of cannabis is going to go down in Michigan. I mean, come on.
It has
right?
to.
Like, you're shocked that the fucking bottom dropped out of the price of an ounce wholesale? Yeah. Really?
Well, they went through their supply challenges, right? And then they had hit with a bunch of shit product, and then there was black market product coming in, and then it was just crazy.
But like Oregon has seen it, California has seen it, Colorado has seen it, Canada's seen it.
California's dealt with their counterfeit vape issues. They've got their gummy issues. Like we're all gonna have these issues. But let me ask you one last question.
Yeah.
What gets you the most excited about? I'll say the North American cannabis industry.
Well, I'm gonna. I think Dan Sutton kept saying this, but maybe I'm misquoting him because I like quoting him. Like the industry is smaller today than it's going to be tomorrow, right? Like there is still, like when an aggregate, North America wide, there's going to be like the markets are growing in almost every market it's operating in, save California, right? So it's growing. There will be more and better products in the future than there are now, even though there are great products now, and like that is exciting. And I feel like we're a little bit jaded because we've been in the industry for like, oh my God, 6 years, you longer. But like, that is nothing. Like, think about the people who came out of alcohol prohibition 5 years hence. Like, I don't know.
They're still trembling.
Right. But like, they're like, well, what the hell? Like, you think about the things that you've even seen, and like, you see some products, or you hear some people's stories, or you hear their backgrounds, or you hear how they're joining the industry now. Like, things are interesting. Like it's very dynamic, even though it seems to us to be old hat. And that's why it's nice to visit new markets, because people still have that naive lens on it, which is both naive, but also refreshing to see. And this, like I'm in New Hampshire a lot, and I talk to the advocates there who are trying to get adult use, and you hear that, you're like, I can't believe you don't have it yet. Like that just like, and then you go to places like, I was just in Florida. I'm like, what do you mean I can't go in somewhere and buy weed? Like that just seems crazy. Like, what are you waiting for? What are you worried about? Like, every main street in Toronto has, in Canada, like there's tons of weed.
It's
right?
strange, man. Especially as you travel the world, right? You see how the different regions are coming online. I think ICBC will be an interesting event this year because there's a lot of Canadians obviously looking for export.
Yeah.
And I've had personal conversations with some where they're like, I can't get sell through, I can't get distribution, I can't get this. RTVs are happening, and I'm like, are you going to be at ICBC? No. I'm like, why the fuck not?
Yeah.
Like,
one importer.
Seriously, one fell swoop, you're done. Like, if you can't, you're struggling and battling to get recognition for your brand in Canada.
Yeah.
There is open and willing receivers.
Yeah.
Like they're just looking for quality flower. Doesn't have to be the highest quality flower, but there's a right price for the right product.
Yeah.
That's all it needs to be, right?
Yeah.
And there's plenty of individuals that are obviously brokering that, but I think maybe that's the shot across the bow, is just start exporting all the fucking cannabis to Europe, and then there's nothing available, and maybe the OCS and some of these, and the price will go up, and OCS might go, oh, okay, we'll charge less. We'll charge less.
What about you? Like, what keeps your lights on there?
Man, you mean as far as hope?
Yeah.
Hope for the industry?
Or just what you're excited to see, even if it's unhopeful.
Excited to see. I think the intelligence factor is starting to come up a little bit when it comes to seeing, operators. It's something that we've said from the very beginning, especially for someone that was visiting so many facilities with a background in manufacturing. And I would go through and I'm like, oh, fuck. Wes remembers this. We come back, they're like, how was this facility, right? Because I was the one experiencing it. And I'm like, yeah, they're not going to make it. they're just not going to make it. I don't think it'll be this year, but it might be 1 or 2 years. They're just not going to make it because you see so much inefficiency, right?
Yeah.
Where I would love to see opportunities is really just a matter of allowing brands to compete for the market share, for that mind share, really. Does it need a full overhaul of the regulations? Not necessarily. I think that if you open a few things up, not necessarily force everyone contextually to meta and social. This is the only place we can advertise. Alberta's made some strides, obviously. But I think for ourselves, at least from my point of view, is 2025 is going to be the year of reckoning, I think. And I've heard this, and I never jumped on that bandwagon before where, we heard it in 22, we heard it in 23, we heard it in 24. This is the year of M&A. Well, this will be, I think, one of the years of M&A, but forced M&A, right? Due to insolvency, CCAA, et cetera. We're just going to see the operators that probably, and it sucks because some of these people are friends.
Of course.
Right? They just shouldn't be operating. They should be doing something completely different. They really should.
Junior mining.
Junior mining.
Do you know what that is? I still don't know what it is.
I don't. Wes probably does. This guy knows more.
I don't know. I've never heard
junior
that term.
mining.
Yeah,
is that like mining junior mints?
No, I think it's like, I don't know, so I'm not even gonna say. But I thought it was like a level of mining to like early exploration. That's
like
what I thought.
Bitcoin mining?
No, like actual mining. Mining, like in Iqaluit.
I'm getting junior mining. Looks like data analytics. Unless I'm I don't know.
No, it's like it was part of like, I know the folks at like CES. The CSE. Like a lot of those companies were, and actually some of the companies that were listed as junior mining companies became, the tickers probably got taken. Like was it Strike? News Strike.
News Strike. Yeah, that's a really close friend of mine started that.
Yeah,
really close friend.
And then
you're my hometown friend.
Right, and then they got the hip signed up, and then they sold the Hydropothecary, AGCO. Like it became a real.
Dude, that's where I got excited. I'm like, fuck yeah, look at this. And then not that it needed to rest on celebrity, but I saw celebrity coming into the mix where you see like the Tragically Hip endorsing and going, yeah, like come on, let's go. We're Canadian. Cannabis is Canadian. Let's make something of this, right? And then you see Seth come in, Canadian but American, coming in with Houseplant, signs these audacious deals with Canopy, first products out on the market, fan-fucking-tastic. Yeah. And then, well, we can't do that at premium cost like that, not when we're paying him too. So let's offer a subpar product for the same pricing, and the brand just fails miserably. Yeah. So,
can I tell you one funny story that this sort of relates to, especially? There used to be a thing called the World Cannabis Congress. It was held in St. John, New Brunswick. It was put on by Civilized. Mm-hmm. We went in 2018. I think it was in 2019. It was still big, right? It was Canada was still happening. It was like, and I had to come back to go to a fish show. That's how. And I'm at the airport, New Brunswick, which is like teeny tiny. Yeah. And Bruce Linton is there. And I was like, Bruce, what are you doing here? He's like, he was waiting for Martha Stewart's plane because she was going to speak at the. And I was like, what is going on? Where Bruce Linton is waiting for Martha Stewart to get in there by plane to go speak to a group of people in St. John, New Brunswick. Like the world is so topsy-turvy.
Jeez, man. Yeah. And then Snoop Dogg rolls up.
Yeah, I was like, this is like such a moment in time. That's like, and this is interesting because adult use or legalized sales had happened, and the New Brunswick Cannabis, whatever it's called.
Cannabis MB,
They had set up a dispensary in the convention center. Oh. Because they ruled up, they regulated themselves.
They regulate it, yeah.
In the back of the room was a dispensary.
What the hell, eh?
The best thing is that they were giving out shirts. On the shirts, one said the World Cannabis Congress, of course. Yeah. One said a brand, which I don't name. There was another brand on this side and like another brand on the back, like it's all branded swag. And I got the shirt. It's great. And now none of the companies on this shirt that I wear are around anymore, including Civilized World Cannabis Congress.
I've got, we've joked about it before. I've got, an entire fleet of hats that they just no longer exist.
Yeah. So, those are the great ones. In fact, I wore my Civilized hat that I got from John Prentice at one of the offices recently. I was like, can I take that? He's like,
Yeah. I'm sure if you go see John, he'll give you some, oh my God, we just lost it. This
Can Trust.
It was Fina. Can Trust, yeah. Can Trust. You get some of that kicking around.
well,
Anyways.
the number of canvas bags, water bottles, pens
Yeah.
that I have of like,
Yeah.
the kids are like, what is this pen? I'm like, what do you think? Like,
Yeah.
what do you think it is?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
It has
yeah.
nothing to do with anything other than cannabis.
Yeah. Although I will say now I have some ones from other markets, which
There
they're
you
actually
go,
still
yeah.
in business, which is helpful. So.
Yeah. Well, anyways, Jay, been awesome catching up, man. Appreciate it so much. Thanks for joining Legacies. We'll have you back on, of course.
Yeah, love that. Love what you're doing. Love to have you on Cultivate as well. Hear what's going on. So we'll
Anytime,
do it in
man.
reverse.
Anytime.
Can't do it for an hour 11, but we'll do it.
What
we'll
do we
it a
get?
20
4
minute
minutes?
chunk.
I can't even say my name in 4 minutes.
I know. But we'll have to. We'll just run it on 1.5 times speed.
Oh, there you go. All right.
Thanks so
for
much,
joining
guys.
us, buddy. Appreciate
Appreciate
it.
it.
Well, it was fun. Thanks for reconnecting with Jay.
Yeah. Two very, I won't say opposite, but two very different perspectives today, I think.
Yeah, for sure. You know, it was funny because I busted his chops about not remembering Peter. Peter, as we were talking, Peter sent me a photo. It was Jay requesting to connect with him on LinkedIn. He used to get so upset. He's like, how the fuck does that guy not remember me? We've met like 5 times.
To be fair, I have to side with Jay on this one. I'm not great with sometimes not great with faces. Well, faces was one thing. Names is different. Names is completely different for me.
Yeah, I don't know. But I think what made it worse is I just told Peter, I'm like, you're just not memorable. Something about you. You're not memorable. Love them both though. No, it was good to hear Chris's perspective. I think, he obviously, Chris took some heat, right? Is the first to go through this bullshit with the AGCO. I call it bullshit just because I know that they're bigger players that they could have gone after. And he's just operating, man. And, to his point, he's like, how much are we really making off this? I have changed my tune, like I had said, over, the last few months about there is some risk involved. If I'm a retailer, Costco doesn't take many risks when they bring new products into their shelves, right? But then on the flip side, you see Jay, and Jay's an American that came and did cannabis, media work here in Canada when things were booming. He was able to exit that company. Good for him. And Blaine, I remember Blaine. And, now he's doing Cultivated Media. And I think that it somewhat shows what the opportunities within the US are, because I don't know what his prominence or presence in Canada is with Cultivated. I wonder if it would have the same effect. Is that the word I'm looking for? Maybe like is the audience there? Because we know that the audience is vast throughout the US, right? There's a lot more paying attention to the industry, the operators, the players, who's working, what's not working, all that kind of stuff. Versus in Canada, where most of our news is around who's doing well and who's not. It's not a lot of new things coming out. So I don't know. It's one of the things that we've even talked about in Wrestle. Like we are predominantly Canadian content, telling and sharing the stories of those operators, of those that influence the industry. But we still have American guests on, right? Because it's relevant. It's relevant information. It's an echo of what we may see or what the US could potentially see. So I don't know. It's a fun episode. Nice catching up with Jay, though.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, until next week, thanks for joining Legacies.